members and everybody here. I think everybody is here who I was expecting to be present. So, good evening everyone, members of the Local Plan Subcommittee, members in the audience, quite a few people here tonight, which is nice to see, and anyone watching on the Council's YouTube channel. Welcome to this meeting of Local Plan Subcommittee of the 1st of October. I will start with apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Coleridge, who is being substituted by Councillor Schweer, and apologies from Councillor Walsh, being substituted by Councillor Hooks. Declarations of interest. I will do a joint declaration for everyone on behalf of Councillors Edwards, Jeffries and Staines, who are all speaking this evening, and as district councillors are known to us, so I'll do a joint declaration on that. And I will also make an NRI, a non-registrable interest, just generally, and it's really just for absolute clarity, in that the husband of one of the speakers this evening, Jennifer O'Connell, who's speaking, her husband, Matthew O'Connell, I've had previous conversations with about the local plan process, going back to when we first did this several years ago. So it's a slightly tenuous connection, but I think just for clarity, I will make that declaration. And it was around the local plan process. I at no stage discussed any thoughts on any sites. So I will remain in the chair. Could I have any show of hands for any other declarations of interest? Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to give OAR for GNBN 2151. I was heavily involved with the No Book Green Action Group back in the day that helped the refusal and subsequent dismissal at appeal. So I feel that I shouldn't probably be in the room when that is debated, so I won't vote on that one. And then RAYN 2241 and SALI 2258. I am the chair of Vane Parish Council and also a councillor on Sailings Parish Council. I have not been involved with discussions at either council about the proposed sites, and also because of being known within both villages, there's a couple of speakers that are known to me, but I have not discussed the matter with them, so therefore I will stay in the room and take part in the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. I'd like to declare a non-registrable interest in RAN 2241 and SALI 2258. I have received a number of representations from members of the public on them. Whilst I may have responded, I haven't indicated any views and therefore would like to remain in the meeting and participate. And also, Madam Chairman, I think I would just like to declare, it's probably an over-declaration, in fact I'm sure it is, but I think that's better to do that, a generic declaration as Cabinet Member at Essex County Council for Highways and Transportation, because I think as we go through more of these big site meetings, some of these issues obviously will be discussed. I think it's appropriate I declare that.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. Yes, better to declare than not, I feel. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Along with the declarations which you've made on behalf of all of us, a non-registrable interest in item 5, land at Andrewsfield and the adjoining one at Rain, in that the speakers include Councillors MacLeod, O'Connell and Rickwood, who are members of parish councils that I attend in my county council capacity. I've not discussed the issue with them, so I intend to stay and vote.
Thank you. Any others? No? All right. Thank you, members. The next item on the agenda of minutes, the minutes from last week's meeting, which is the 24th of September, are not available this evening. We will send them out as soon as they are. Public question time. I've got just a couple of things to say on this. Firstly, we've got 11 speakers tonight. 8 of those speakers are on the Andrewsfield site. So I have agreed with officers that we will move that item up to the top of the agenda, because at the moment it's pretty well down at the end. And that means that those of you, obviously you are very welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but if that is the only item that you really have an interest in, I thought it was probably the right thing to do to move it to the top of the agenda, and then you're free to go after that if you wish. And I will call everybody forward before the item that you're interested in, not do you all on a block now. One other thing I want to say, and that's about registering to speak. I did give some pretty strong advice at last week's meeting about the deadline for speaking, which is 12 noon, 2 working days before the meeting where you want to speak. And that deadline is there for a reason, and I did explain why. Yesterday, I extended that deadline by a few hours, which was a little bit lenient of me, but I did. I had a couple of people came forward within that extended deadline, but I have to say I'm not going to do that going forward. I think I've given enough warning that we need to have these registrations in time. It's only in fairness to the governance team, who have to keep revising the speaker list, sending it over to me to be approved, and then going back to everybody to confirm their slots. So I think, you know, I have given enough warning and enough quite strong advice on that. So after today, our next meeting of this committee is Monday, next Monday. So the deadline to register for that will be 12 noon Thursday, which is tomorrow. Yes, thank you, Alison. 12 noon tomorrow. If you come in after 12 noon tomorrow to register to speak, I'm afraid it won't be accepted. But, you know, deadlines are there for a reason. So, you know, hope that's okay. Well, it's going to have to be okay with everybody. Right, okay, that's that. And one final thing. If everybody, officers and everybody in the committee could just remember to put your mics on and speak up a bit. I just had a little bit of feedback from last week. There are 1 or 2 sort of spots in the chamber towards the back in the corners where it's a little bit harder to hear what's being said. I think it's got a lot better since some of the earlier meetings, but just 1 or 2, there are 1 or 2 sort of, I was going to say hot spots, probably cold spots, where it's not quite so easy. So just, if everybody could just remember to speak up, that would be much appreciated. Right, I think that's everything with my announcements. So we will move on to the agenda proper. Item 5, large-scale strategic sites assessments, central area. Do have, as I say, quite a lot of speakers on the Andrewsfield item, so I'm going to move that up to the top. And we will start with the first speaker on this is Dr. Roger Martin, from Shalford Road, Braintree. Dr. Martin. Everyone has 3 minutes. We're going to be pretty strict on the 3 minutes. I won't stop you halfway through a sentence, but if you could try and stick to 3 minutes, that would be good. Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Roger Martin. I'm a retired GP and interested not only in human beings, but also in all living things. The area north of Rain, extending up the Shalford Road, is rich in biodiversity. There are herds of fallow deer, and also weasels, stoats, badgers and foxes. There are red kites, buzzards, skylarks and yellowhammers. It's illegal to disturb or kill kites, punishable by a fine or prison sentence. Yellowhammers and skylarks are on a RSPB red list of critically endangered species. The land covered by the proposal is good agricultural land used for growing wheat, barley and rape. This increases carbon uptake, whereas development would increase carbon output. The 2014 Tour de France chose the Shalford Lane from the north past Mounts Farm to Rain as part of its route. This is a scenic open area with good horizons and views. This would be visually destroyed by development. The area is of great recreational value, not only for cyclists, but also walkers and ramblers who use the footpaths around Mounts Farm and down to Podds Brook. The wood at Golden Grove is a spectacle in spring with a mass of bluebells. Although the wood is private, many from Rain and surrounding areas go there in spring by a public footpath to see the bluebells and also as a scenic walk at other times of the year. The Shalford Road is a narrow lane, and many times I've been nearly forced into the ditch by oncoming vans. It's too narrow for a lorry to pass without backing. There is no infrastructure to this isolated area. Rain Primary School is already full, there are no GP surgeries nearby, and transport links are non-existent. I urge the members to reject this proposal. It is environmentally destructive and unworkable. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Thank you. The next speaker I have is Mrs. Janice MacLeod from Woolpits Road, Great Sailing.
Good evening. I'm Janice MacLeod, a resident of Bardfield Sailing and a parish councillor for the Sailings. However, to clarify, I'm speaking in a personal capacity this evening. I found myself utterly shocked to see these two sites being put forward for proposed development once again. Although councils will make decisions that one might not agree with at times, ordinarily, if one looks hard enough, you can eventually see the rationale for it and even reluctantly understand it. However, this is just a case of asking the same question and expecting a different answer. In reality, that never happens. These sites, albeit in a slightly different guise, were extensively scrutinised and reviewed in the recent past under the proposed West of Braintree scheme by an independent inspector, and despite Braintree Council spending 5+ years and over £2 million of already limited public funds on the project, it was found to be unsound as a proposal and unviable as a site. As I understand it, only the following has changed. It's fewer houses, it's a slightly smaller site. However, these two factors seem to make the project more problematic than last time, not less. The amount of infrastructure needed is huge, and as the site has nothing, and is near nothing apart from a road, the number of proposed houses presumably means the infrastructure cost per house will be higher, which seems less viable. It appears there is no rapid transport system, something the inspector last time said would be required for the site to be acceptable in transport terms, but rather a loosely conceptualised bus service with no dedicated bus lanes. It seems that everyone on the site would rely on cars, leading to the clogging up of congested local roads, with the A120 already such a constrained road. The suggestion that individuals would cycle well over 5 kilometres in all weathers to reach Braintree Station for one train an hour is simply farcical. Braintree Station is a branch line station, not a main line like Witham. That is not sustainable transport, whether in terms of official guidance or just common sense. The fact it's a smaller site could be considered to be a positive until one really thinks about it. The significant heritage implications were not fully explored by the inspector last time, but rather it was noted there were key hurdles and needed to be explored further. The long view from Sailing's original Repton landscape needs to be protected, and this would definitely necessitate changing the shape of the site and possibly reducing the number of houses, which would further affect viability. Just finishing on this viability point, as it was clearly critical last time, the assessment was done on the larger site, which would clearly have had more economies of scale. Costs have skyrocketed, the cost of financing the land and purchasing for many years is double, and the housing market has declined, and I can attest firsthand to this as I work in this field. Looking to allocate the site just isn't compatible with a detailed examination which gives so many key points of precedent. Having another difficult local plan process and examination is not what people in the district want. Including this site is a sure way to complicate things when it isn't necessary to do so. I urge you not to take this route. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms MacLeod. The next speaker is Mr John Davies from New Green, Bardfield Sailing.
Good evening, Madam Chairman.
Good evening.
Fellow councillors. I do understand that local councils are being put under pressure by government to deliver what seems to me to be entirely unsustainable housing targets. But there does come a point when we can't keep ploughing down an ill-fated path with regard to this proposed development, which has already been proven to be unviable. 3 points. First, transport. You argued previously that critical mass was needed to make this site viable. We don't have that critical mass, so all of the additional transport services and benefits that would go along with that are unlikely to be provided. Cycling to Braintree was suggested as an alternative, and as the previous speaker said, Braintree Station only has one train per hour into Whitton and London. So there does not seem to be adequate transport. In fact, if anything, the transport connections have got worse rather than better. It really does not seem to be a sensible rationale to develop this site, the consequences of which will be the destruction of over 1,000 acres of beautiful, high-grade, food-producing countryside, to construct a housing development which is likely to be doomed to failure. The fact that there doesn't seem to be a viable and sustainable plan for transport in the area, which was one of the reasons why the application failed last time, is another reason why I would urge you to reconsider this proposal. Second point I want to make relates to economic viability. It was demonstrated at the last inspection, which cost a great deal of money, a great deal of public funds, that the site was not economically viable, not at the largest scale and not at this scale. We're now in a worse economic climate. Building and finance costs have escalated dramatically, so I'm not sure how you could possibly conclude that the site is now economically viable and a sensible project to include as a key part of the district's local plan. And should it proceed to inspection, these matters would surely all be considered and your role heavily scrutinised, particularly bearing in mind that you already had access to the precedent inspector's decision. Now, what are the alternatives? Based on a layman's view of additional potential sites in the area, there must be a number of much more strategically and sensibly located options near better or proposed transport links, which are not tainted by a prior objective and independent inspector's decision of unsuitability and lack of viability. So my request to you is that you ask your officers to propose alternatives which will produce a much more sustainable local plans and which will stand a much better chance of success at examination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. The next speaker is Ms. Samantha Reeves from Woolpits Road, Great Sailing. Good evening.
Good evening, councillors. So yes, I live in Woolpits Road, which is a designated quiet lane, literally around the corner from the Andrewsfield site. With only 3 minutes this evening, I wanted to just quickly touch on two of the key reasons why I consider this site to be unworkable. The first, as many have touched on, is the infrastructure. Whilst the development includes proposals for new infrastructure, unless these facilities are built at the outset, the existing local facilities are just simply unable to cope with the influx and increase in population. Existing facilities are already extremely stretched. As a mother to a 3-month-old son, I'm looking for nursery facilities. There's an 18-month waiting list, and I'm struggling to find a place to be able to get back to work in the summer of next year. The local schools are village schools. They're already being pushed to capacity by developments on the outskirts of villages like Great Bardfield and Stebbing. There's no way those schools are going to be able to cope with the increase of hundreds, potentially thousands of new students until facilities are built to accommodate them. The provision of infrastructure up front was shown at the previous examination of this site not to be possible. It can only be assumed that this remains to be the case, and therefore the proposed development will severely negatively impact the existing local facilities and the existing population. The second key point I want to cover is transport. The proposed location of the development is too remote to make public transport viable in order to get to work, whether that be in the local towns or, as many like myself, going into London. As I said, the closest railway station is Braintree. That's only a branch line with services every 45 minutes in peak times. That's simply not workable for people with careers in London, and many do go to Chelmsford, like myself, causing yet more further traffic to the roads on the A120, the A131, etc. It's too far to cycle to Braintree. The B roads are not suitable for cycling, particularly in the dark. It would be incredibly dangerous. There's also no local bus services, and even if those were introduced, they need to be suitable for modern family living. The proposed development of 6,000 homes at this site is getting close to the size of a development such as Bewley Park. That's on the outskirts of a city with already very good public transport network. It's even had its own station built. unless there's a very significant investment by developers or the council in public transport in this area and improving the road network, which I understand is not to be the case, then the increase in population generated by this proposed development is totally unsuited to its rural location. Thank you very much.
Sorry, thank you, Ms Reeves. The next speaker is Ms Alexandra Woolmore on behalf of Hill Residential Limited, the applicant.
Good evening, and thank you for providing the opportunity to speak at your meeting. My name is Alex Woolmore, Planning Director at Hill Residential, a family-owned NHBC 5-star rated house builder founded by Andy Hill and headquartered here in Essex. To clarify, we are Hill Residential without the S and have no connection with the similarly named Hills Residential that also operate locally. We work nationwide, but with a focus on East Anglia, London and the south of England. In 2023, we partnered with Barwood Land and the main landowners at Andrewsfield, combining land, finance, master planning and delivery expertise to create a strong platform for implementation. For over 25 years, Hill has delivered exceptional homes and places, including down the road at Finchingfield and complex mixed-use communities like Marley and Eddington, both award-winning schemes in Cambridge. Barwood Land also brings strong experience in promoting and delivering strategic development, acting as master developer to bring forward key infrastructure and maintain quality throughout phase delivery. In our submission to your officers, which was supported by evidence from a suite of technical surveys and investigation work, we presented a fresh concept for developing a site that was a fundamentally different proposition to the North Essex Garden Communities proposal from 2017 and which can be delivered. For example, 1, smaller scale of development. At 6,000 homes, it's less than half the size of the previous proposal and all within Braintree District. 2, more realistic transport infrastructure. The scheme will of course be supported by all necessary infrastructure. However, nothing from our work today or feedback from Essex Highways suggests any requirement for the high fixed cost rapid transit system or dualling scheme that are integral to the previous proposals. 3, viability and phasing. The more realistic infrastructure costs mean the site is viable based on robust and prudent commercial assumptions. 4, deliverable. The land we need has already been assembled by Hill and Barwood Land, and together we have the resources and expertise to act as master developer and oversee its smooth and high quality delivery. And finally, 5, planning. The concept has been assessed against national planning policy and would support rather than undermine a sound local plan. Despite his doubts on the detail, the inspector for the last local plan was content that a location west of Braintree was suitable. Our smaller site and a more sensitive context-led approach directly tackles those earlier concerns and addresses all the reasons that led the previous proposals to be rejected. In particular, we have looked carefully at the landscape and settlement context and assumed generous landscape buffers to ensure the identity and character of existing villages can be maintained. If the site is taken forward tonight as a draft allocation, Hill and Barwood are committed to working collaboratively with the council, stakeholders, statutory consultees and communities to shape a master plan that delivers much needed homes and a vibrant new community that Braintree can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Woolmore. The next speaker is Councillor Jan Rickwood for Rain Parish Council. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Rain Parish Council strongly objects to the proposed allocation of land RAWN 2241 and SALI 2258 between Rain and Sailing. We've been here before. This proposal is now 541 hectares in total, including 14 hectares of employment and 250 hectares of so-called green space. It is described as 3 villages, but nowhere in the report is it made clear where these would actually sit. Without this clarity, how can anyone make an informed decision? The build-out rate is suggested at 250 dwellings a year, equating to over 30 years of disruption. Our concern is simple. How many houses will be built before the promised infrastructure arrives? Where are the doctors, the schools, the employment opportunities? The first residents would be remote, isolated, and wholly reliant on already outstretched facilities. This will not be a self-servicing development. In reality, most people will commute, as local employment cannot support development of this scale. It risks becoming another commuter town. Access is another fundamental flaw. Blake End Road would be the only way in and out, effectively a giant cul-de-sac. Shelford Road, being one of the district's most highly protected lanes, cannot be used, and the policy is very strong on preserving that. We are told of supposed benefits to Rain. Even if the facilities were built close, Shalford Road prevents access. Rain will not gain, only carry the burden of extra traffic. On transport, the A120 slips are one-sided. Eastbound access exists at Rain, but to travel west, drivers must use the B1256 through Great Dunmow. This road was deliberately downgraded after the construction of the A120, yet this proposal would force thousands of extra vehicles back onto it. The slip roads at Rain were designed in a way to prevent rat running, and Rain has no wish to see this protection undone. Much is made of links to the Flitch Way, but how? Are we seriously proposing footbridges over the A120 or tarmacking and lighting a heritage linear country park? We fought that battle before. Residents do not want the Flitch Way urbanised in the name of sustainable travel. Cycling to Braintree is presented as realistic, yet the distance is more than 4 miles from Blake End, further from the edge of the allocation. There are no cycle routes that are safe into Braintree, and there is only one train per hour if you get there. There are further constraints such as Rain Quarry, which is under a Section 106 agreement. Members, this proposal has been tried before and rejected by a planning inspector after a costly process. The fundamental flaws still remain. Issues of access, isolation, sustainability and deliverability have not been resolved. We urge you not to support this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rickwood. Our next speaker is Councillor Jennifer O'Connell for Sailing Parish Council. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councillors. I'm Jennifer O'Connell, speaking here on behalf of the Sailings Parish Council, looking to discuss the proposed Andrewsfield and Blake End allocations. While we understand that there are a range of views on the previous local plan examination, it is a fact of record that the site was rejected due to a number of shortcomings, including viability, transport and highways. This is very important and councillors need to understand. Legally, the precedent is a material consideration to be taken into account in future examination of the site. So you are starting, in sporting terms, if you'll forgive me, at the equivalent of 3-0 down at half-time. The site is very different from the 3 other proposed large allocations, which are either urban adjacent or with very good upfront accessibility to stations and existing social infrastructure. The planning environment for a genuinely isolated site like this is largely unchanged since the last examination, and the viability environment is much worse. Construction and engineering costs have gone through the roof, financing costs are a big step higher, and housing prices are stalling. For example, the Finchingfield site mentioned by the Speaker for Hills has still not sold all of its houses after 2 years following completion. We understand that officers have a difficult job here, but with respect, tonight's report on the site is simply far too rosy-tinted, with little scrutiny. Some examples of this include there is no existing or potential cycle route from the site within a commuting distance. Whitewashing heritage risk, despite Historic England's previous concerns. Not even addressing viability concerns at all. Overlooking the Council's own agreed position that the site in scale is reliant on the A120 dualling. Not considering the Sailings Neighbourhood Plan. It is represented that a smaller site will resolve issues from the last time, but in fact, in technical terms, it is likely that viability and transport considerations become amplified rather than mitigated by this change. Scrutiny on the cost of upfront infrastructure per dwelling, the genuine ability to deliver fast and regular buses without eternal expensive subsidies and so on, will all show a site where the numbers simply do not work. For this site, you have multiple parish councils who have already deeply understand the issues, have the same experts on board on heritage, transport, employment, viability, and now also top legal representation, and are well organised and ready to demonstrate the site's shortcomings again, no stone would go unturned. The site is heavily tainted in legal terms, and from a public sentiment perspective, no one wants the real risk of an undesirable, isolated commuter dormitory estate, which will no doubt stall unfinished and inadequate. There is time to reject this allocation and make some tweaks to the site selections, refocusing on existing transport hubs for a plan better placed to pass the examination. We humbly propose that you take that course of action tonight, rather than put the plan at risk of failure or sizable delays later on. 2/3 of an unviable project will still be an unviable project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
O'Connell. Thank you. And the last speaker on this item is Councillor Michael Staines, District Councillor.
Thank you, Chair, members. This suite of local plan review meetings marks the end of an era for Braintree District Council, as its housing targets and delivery plans will be subsumed into a larger unitary and combined mayoral authority in 2028, which is well before this revised plan is due to take effect in 2033. As we know, rain's back on the agenda tonight, up to between 6,000 and 7,000 houses in all, proposed to form a new strategic growth area west of Braintree, and we've got Kingsdean, Newtown near Kelvedon next week. That means that the lion's share of BDC's response to the UK's top-down housing targets are included today and next Monday. These meetings offer the last opportunities before GECA for local residents and local councillors to participate in a local planning meeting and for its decisions to be decided locally. Putting aside for a minute that its result will be subject first to inspector review and then to the new Mayor's spatial planning powers. I hope that members of this committee will actively listen to the residents' concerns tonight, excellently and eloquently presented, and again on the 6th of October when they detail why they have little confidence in adequate infrastructure ever being delivered before mass houses are submitted for planning, built, or even after they are occupied. I don't know the ramifications of a failed local plan post-mayoral combined authority, but placing so much significance on west of Braintree too could be problematic, again, and for the same well-documented and unresolved reasons identified by the inspector before. West of Braintree's viability has reduced markedly since 2020 as building costs have risen faster than prices, and Stansted Airport's highly anticipated expansion has already led to huge planning approvals and building in closer villages. So perhaps answers to these two questions might help this committee tonight and next week. What Braintree District only delivery mechanism will convince a different inspector that west of Braintree is acceptable this time? So is there a Braintree District only child of the North Essex garden community waiting in the wings? And finally, what happens on vesting day if the new mayoral combined authority inherits one or more local plans which are either incomplete or made but geared to deliver fewer houses than the target prescribed to the now defunct local authorities by the UK government? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staines. That concludes the speakers on this item, so we will now turn to the agenda item, which is recommendation 14, land at Andrewsfield, Braintree, and it starts on page 39 of your agendas, members. And Sarah, are you starting with this one? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So recommendation 14 relates to RAIN 2241, which comprises 541 hectares of land, providing around 6,000 homes and 14 hectares of employment land. On screen is the proposed site area. And this slide shows how the growth area would be shown within a draft plan if it were to be allocated. This slide actually includes SALI 2258, which is covered in recommendation 15. I will take you through some photos now. So on screen is a photo south of Old Hall Bungalow. Views towards Old Hall from the north. North of Pond Farm looking northeast.
view towards Blackbush Wood from Blake House complex. This is looking towards the registered park and garden towards the hedgerow boundary. This is west of Romley Wood towards Great Sailing Grove. This is view towards Monk Farm from the field to the southwest, Mounts Farm, sorry. View towards Parks Farmhouse from the east. View towards the group of buildings at Parks Farmhouse from the south, showing the hedgerow. View looking east towards Onker's Farmhouse. View south across the large field to the north towards the group of listed buildings at Pound Farm. And view from Pound Farm looking north. So next is the illustrative plan, which shows 3 villages with local centres. So the north and west villages would include a primary school. The south village would include primary school, secondary school and mixed-use employment. The site has direct access to the A120 to support growth in this location. In line with the MPPF requirements, a vision-led approach to identify transport solutions is proposed. That aims to provide a suite of sustainable mitigation measures which are aimed at achieving modal shift and reducing car use. And those are as set out in paragraph 2.65 of the report on page 47 of the agenda. In terms of the initial highways work that's been undertaken to support the local plan review process, an initial sustainability accessibility appraisal of spatial options has been undertaken against accessibility criteria, including access to urban centres, health and education services, proximity to bus and rail routes, and frequent public transport services. And following the appraisal, sites with high levels of sustainable accessibility would typically be selected across different locations with differing housing and employment allocations to collectively represent a variety of spatial options to take forward into the transport impact modelling. When you look at the potential scoring for Andrewsfield, which is on screen, as a strategic growth location, the scoring is one of the more sustainable and accessible locations within the district once the development's complete. So its existing score is less good, but it's about the possibility of what the site itself can provide. And as such, officers feel this warrants consideration through further modelling work, which will be undertaken to support the Regulation 18 consultation. It's acknowledged there were concerns from the previous inspector that relating to the completion of the A120 dualling scheme being necessary to support the build-out of 10,000 dwellings that were previously proposed. However, there's now a much smaller quantum of development proposed in comparison to the previous scheme. In addition, this conclusion was reached some time ago, and since this time, a number of committed road improvements have been delivered. Should also be noted that the inspector's conclusions were based on modelling work which predates the pandemic, which changed commuting patterns, and as such, new modelling work is needed to confirm the impact of this growth location. The modelling work's ongoing, but will be complete prior to the Regulation 18 consultation commencing. Should this reveal severe harm to the road network, then the site's strategic growth location would need to be revisited, and we would be able to do that. In terms of the previous viability concerns, the scheme is materially different to the previous proposal. It's smaller and does not propose the rapid transit solution, which contributed to the previous scheme being considered to be at or below the margins of viability. So these are materially different to the previous conclusions. Overall, the site's not considered to have any constraints which can't be resolved and can be explored more fully as the local plan process develops. And it's therefore recommended that the site's allocated as a strategic growth location in the draft plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Cunningham. And then
Madam Chairman, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to Sarah for that presentation, and thank you to the many excellent speakers we've had in public question time this evening. Difficult decisions are part of this rather inadequate process that we find ourselves in terms of a call for sites and finding additional houses with ever-increasing housing targets. And BDC, as it's always tried to do, is doing its best to respond to what is effectively a broken system, where the onus is on local government to paint the picture of where houses should go, trying to do the best job for existing communities and residents, but not having any real levers of power to do it in terms of ensuring build out quickly too much emphasis on the role of the developers. Now, this is a fault of governments of all persuasions, so I'm not going to be political tonight. The situation we find ourselves in is a failure of national policy, but also a failure of recognition that actually to fully unlock the potential of North Essex, which is a net contributor to the national economy, you need the infrastructure improvements, and we have been badly let down by not just the A120 but the A12. Now, the proposition of development in this area, I think, goes back some decades, developing the Andrewsfield. I wasn't around, well, say, wasn't politically active in the 80s, but I know colleagues who were, and I understand that there was a very balanced decision in favour of a development at Great Notley in the 80s, and that was built out in the 90s and early noughties, and it was a fine margins between this and Andrewsfield. So it's perhaps not surprised that, bearing in mind this was an active consideration in the early stages of the existing local plan, that this site has come forward again. But when we looked at this as part of the existing local plan, the unsuccessful Section 1, it was part of 3 garden communities across the north of Essex, an unprecedented strategic partnership looking ahead decades, all the partners around the table, district councils, the county councils, other agencies, and importantly, central government at the table in terms of support and enthusiasm from Homes England, all with the view of unlocking the right social and transport infrastructure, coming on stream, levering in the right housing supply that was required for local need, and doing all that we can do to mitigate unnecessary damage to the rural character of some of the most beautiful parts of the east of England. And now that's particularly, I appreciate that's particularly tough on areas that were impacted, but it was a plan, a proposal that if had been deemed appropriate and successful, and the full support would have sorted out a lot of these problems that we have and really set up the area for the next 50 years with a build-out period of the same period of time. So an opportunity to do something different, but the independent inspector deemed that the west of Braintree was not viable for reasons that have been articulated today and have been articulated several times in recent years. So my consideration is, if it wasn't viable when there was the effective goodwill of the system to try and make it happen, how on earth is it viable now? So without that full strategic clout. Now, if it was purely a numbers game and not taking into consideration any other elements that we have tried to take into consideration through this local plan refresh, sense of place, protecting our rural character, sustainability for the future, then we still wouldn't need to recommend this in our emerging local plan refresh because we don't need the numbers. Now, appreciating that our allocation has to have a certain amount of resilience and a buffer, that needs to be balanced with a sense of deliverability. And in the past, it has been said that whilst larger sites can lever in some additional infrastructure, they perform poorly in terms of deliverability, as allocated by one of the parish councillors this evening. So I'm very, very concerned that if we allocate this tonight, we are giving out a rather strange message that we're trying to say we don't want to overdevelop the Braintree district, because that's been an accusation when we've had to put in a buffer of housing numbers before. We don't want to overdevelop, but we're actually allocating more strategic sites than we need to, and therefore the deliverability isn't at the level that it needs to be sustainable. So I think we've got a real problem there going out to Reg 18 consultation, let alone before it lands with the inspector. So bearing in mind the sensitivities expressed by the local communities, which we totally appreciate and indeed very responsibly articulated, I don't see why we need to inflict greater uncertainty in this part of the district this evening. Now, we heard from the developer, and she mentioned some very early preliminary discussions with Essex County Council, but I didn't hear how the A120 problem was going to be sorted. I didn't hear that at all. And living from the West Braintree and see things develop over the last 20, 30 years, Traffic for Galleys Corner builds up now to pretty much the Rain direction. It used to be Panners, but now heading towards Rain. Give it a bit further down the line, it'll probably be Stebbing. Now, with this development, where is acceptable for the car park to stop? Is Dunmow South acceptable? Dunmow North? Or do we want to go all the way to Stansted or maybe to Birchhanger? Unless we deal with the A120 once and for all, or have some meaningful mitigation, this is a bit of a nonsense. It really is. And yes, sustainable transport through rapid transport was possible with the quantum of the whole of the North Essex. Yes, you were in a different league in terms of potential, possibly. But we're not there now. So therefore, I still don't quite see how sustainable transport could be unlocked in this area. And so therefore, I don't think that's a responsible approach at the moment. And we still haven't had the full traffic modelling from Essex County Council. I'm quite sure that Essex County Council would probably say there is current capacity, maybe on the slipways off the A120, and that's probably right in the short, medium term, but we know that won't last terribly long. Now, we know through this process, and the difficult process that's left, we need to find another, in the region of 4,500 houses, to give ourselves something that's deliverable, sustainable, but also give us that resilience in terms of buffer, which I think is important. I think that can be done without the west of Braintree. It's important we take this process seriously. We need to play our part in giving the district resilience, no matter how long this authority lasts or whatever the future arrangements may be. We're not one of these district councils who buries its head in the sand and hands it over to the developers or planning appeals. I mean, if we want to see a great example of poorly done development, all we have to do is go further west into Uttlesford, where the build-out rates have been huge, but actually the quality of the development in terms of levering in that infrastructure, social and transport, there has been an enormous deficit. So it's with that in mind and the opportunity to actually lever in more to deal with existing problems and future problems in some of the other large sites that are going to be coming before us is one of the reasons why I certainly won't be supporting West of Braintree's inclusion this evening and would actively encourage others not to do it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Hooks, I had you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I obviously wasn't on this council last time around when we were doing the local plan, but I am going to ask, why are we dealing with this hot potato again? It's already been examined and rejected by a government inspector, mentioned many times this evening already, but it did cost this council financially and reputationally. So do we really want to go down this route again? There are valid reasons for not allocating West of Braintree to again. Nothing material has really changed in the last 5 years, and reopening this debate risks delaying the adoption of a sound and deliverable plan. And I think it was mentioned last week by officers that the best thing Braintree can have is a sound plan going forward into our new era of local government. So anything that could be construed as difficult, shall we say, as West of Braintree is, I think perhaps should be avoided. And I think this is the context in which we should be now considering the evidence before us. And we've heard some fantastic reasons, and there's so many reasons, and I'm not going to relist them all. But I'm going to say, is this an opportunistic proposal to reintroduce something that has failed? It wasn't suitable then, so why is it being considered suitable now? There seems to be no viability study, especially with the information that was emailed out to us yesterday with this picture in. So how serious can this proposal be considered if there isn't a viability study? And obviously there's the concerns of the rollout going forward. It is a big site, admittedly in 3 villages. Do they start with one village, go to the second one, go to the third one? Do we do all 3 at once? We just don't know. So, and anything that is built out there, especially in the northern village, is so remote, it's going to be difficult to see how that can viably be built. I had a look through the Essex Highways sustainable accessibility assessment, where obviously the recommendation started off as poor, but I think went to, when it was potential, it moved through to potential. And in that document, it seems to be relying on things as cycle network, flitchway upgrades, and new junctions on the A120 and the B1256. That's a long way to cycle to Braintree, and that's been mentioned tonight, so I won't delve deeper, but just to reiterate, that's a long way to cycle just for a train or the buses into town. Flitchway upgrades, obviously that's a massive concern. As we mentioned last week, it's a jewel in our crown. It looks like somebody wants to use it as a cycle urban freeway. But that country linear park also serves dog walkers and horse riding. So to make it into something as a commuter system into town, or even to Bishop Stortford, but you can't get to the Flitchway directly all the way along. So I think there's some discussions there to be had. And also it's the new junctions of the A120 and the B1256. Those of you that are aware at Rain, the way that the two junctions we have, so you can only get on, I have to get my east and my west the right way around, you can only get on eastbound towards Braintree at Rain. If you want to go westbound, you have to drive down the B1256 or into Braintree, navigate Springwood Industrial Estate roundabout, Pods Road, and get onto the A120 that way. People can see that can be problematic, but it was put there to stop Rain becoming a rat run, so people would not come off the bypass and use the village as a quicker means to getting into the town. So we can always look at this with these extra houses that are going to happen, or could happen, that they need to get onto the A120 somehow. And it is either going to be using the B1256, which has been downgraded since the construction of the A120. And I'm not sure they're going to want thousands and thousands of cars back on that road. There have been accidents on that road. As only on Sunday, a man lost his life on that road. Also, there is some much improved or much needed improvements at the Great Dunmow turn-off where the child's play monster area is. But that will become a bottleneck if we don't have the slips. But the slips will cause issues for the village of Rain and rat running. So with the best will in the world, there's a whole reason why the modelling, like Councillor Cunningham said, does need to be looked at. The site definitely has some physical constraints. I'll bring the attention to down on the south village where the quarry is in progress at the moment. As far as I'm aware, there's a 25-year S106 agreement on that land that has to be, after the last restoration, the land for 25 years has to be remaining in agricultural or the nature reserve that's being restored to. So I don't feel that all that land is available. To the east-north is obviously the Shelford Road, protected lane, Pods Lane, and obviously then we have the Sailings conservation area. So it is quite constrained and surrounded by constraints. So I feel that this land already carries a black mark against it. It really does. It's not starting on a blank canvas. The same concerns that led to its rejection remain, and they have not been addressed. To pursue it again would undermine both public trust and the soundness of our own plan. And this is demonstrated by residents in public time and also by Councillor Cunningham already. This is not the right option for Braintree District Council. The only credible decision tonight is to reject this allocation and move forward with a local plan that is sound, defensible and fit for person. And Madam Chair, if I may, am I allowed to say that we propose that we do not go for allocation on this land?
Are you moving that?
I'd like to,
Hooks?
yes, if you feel it's acceptable.
Yes, I'll take that and ask for a seconder, but then I'll see if seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Right, but before I go to a vote, would anybody else, Councillor Abbott, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. As a number of councillors and speakers have said, we have these very high numbers being imposed on us by the government. Historically, for those of us who've been on the council a long time, we know that the last few years we've managed to build out about 1,000 a year in Braintree District. But what the government is now basically saying is you're going to have to carry on doing that for many years in the future. And I, for one, think it's completely unsustainable. It's not going to happen. It would only take 1 or 2 recessions, and they come around, unfortunately, like Christmas. You always get recessions, to knock back the housing market even further. And then what does the government do? Well, you're not building your 1,100 a year, your 1,200 a year, you're only building 500. We're going to penalise you by allowing developers to build on other sites. I think as Councillor Cunningham said, it's a broken system. It is, and successive governments have not addressed that. I think also the process we're following has, and others have raised this, and I've had communications with you about this, Madam Chairman, privately, the sequence in which we're taking these decisions places greater emphasis at different parts. So if we reject all the sites tonight, we're loading a lot of decision making on the last meeting. And how fair is that on communities for the last meeting? Which is for the south of the district, which has already taken a vast amount of development in recent years. So this is a difficult decision. On the business of the countryside, as the gentleman, the retired doctor, said, I totally get that. I love the countryside. All of these sites are going to chew up vast amounts of countryside. They're all huge greenfield sites. It literally makes me weep to think the impact that's going to have on wildlife in the countryside. But the decisions are being imposed on us. Councillor Cunningham, I thought, wouldn't think he'd resist the temptation to go back to part 1. Just a gentle reminder that part 1 did include a larger west of Braintree, about, I think, a third again, or double the size of this. But it also included 24,000 houses at West Tay, which would have stretched from Stanway to Fearing. That would have effectively joined up Colchester with this district at Fearing and Coggeshall. That wasn't a garden community. It was a very large new town on the scale of the largest towns in this region. So that was part of the reason why the inspector twice found the Part 1 plan unviable. In terms of the sustainable appraisal, I take what the County Council says with more than a pinch of salt. The number of rubbish decisions they've made on sustainability, particularly transport. I mean, I won't reel off all the examples, but I could do, where a development is there. We've said as local councils, well, how about that zebra crossing? How about this cycleway? No, they don't do that. They do something completely different, which doesn't actually help, results in a lot of objections. I'll give one example, which is Cressing. We need a proper crossing of the B1018. The County Council has refused time and again to countenance that, even when the developers have said, here's a planning application, so the money could be available to deliver it, and they've turned us down. So it's very, very frustrating. I won't say whether I'm for or against. I'm sort of sitting here thinking, all these things in my head about how do you balance this out. But the one thing I would say is that officers are telling us, and I haven't got my head around this entirely, what I see is this dilemma between the build-out rates they're talking about and the allocations we've got to make. Because I've done some back-of-the-envelope calculations as to if we allocate tonight recommendations and we allocate next Monday recommendations, we end up somewhere completely different to what we were being told a few months ago. Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking this is a very difficult decision tonight. It's going to affect the good people of that area for generations to come, and I don't know quite what the answer is, but I do know we're having to find what I regard as pretty much impossible numbers.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. It's funny how things go. I find myself very much in agreement and in the same predicament as Councillor Abbott on this. I'm not going to make any apology. I think what we did 5 years ago, I am still proud of what we tried to do with the 3 neighbouring authorities. it would have been mould breaking. It would have taken land value away entirely from developers and brought it into local authorities. I think I said at the time it was the biggest piece of municipal socialism that I had ever been involved in. And I still believe, and I'm still disappointed that that did not happen. And you know, I took a lot of flack. I think we had a petition that I should resign as leader, which attracted a lot of support from people in India on the signed petition, etc. But that has gone. We are now in a different position, and this is a different proposal than what we had then. I felt previously it was about designing a community rather than just building houses. This to me is more about how we build houses to meet an imposed target. I think we could have done more work last time on the transit thing. I think the communication along the Northern Line was something which we could have done a bit more on. Just on the viability, I have this afternoon reread the inspector's full report. He certainly said that the one around the Marks Tay, etc., certainly was unviable. He did not say the same about West Braintree. He said it was a little bit more even Steven on that. And it's useful just to look at what was actually said in those days. Where I wholeheartedly agree, and I am very uncomfortable with this, members who tonight are saying, well, yeah, we're all for the community. First of all, what community are we talking about? I declare an interest. I am very well housed, thank you very much, in a very nice house in Great Notley, which was opposed at the time, 20 years ago when Great Notley was done, vigorously by the people of Whitecourt. I do struggle when I see the number of young people, I say young people, they're now getting into their late 20s and early 30s, who are not able to get onto the housing ladder. And those people who are also unable to get not just house ownership, but also being able to rent accommodation, etc. So I'm the generation who picked the right time to be born. And there's something I think we all need to bear in mind. But we've heard tonight very sincere views held by local residents here. I have no doubt that next week we will hear the same from people in other areas. And if councillors adopt the same open-minded approach to that, you know what we're going to end up with? We're not going to have any large sites, and we risk then not getting a local plan and everything being imposed upon us by government. So there are some very, very difficult decisions to be taken. And I do agree with Councillor Abbott that it's unfortunate the way in which we're dealing with this, because it would have been ideal to see the whole picture. Now, we did agree last week to 2,700 houses, Madam Chairman, I think, yes, in Halstead. Now, admittedly, Halstead see a bonus coming from that if they can get that bypass with it, which is fine. This certainly would need significant infrastructure. Now, people say, oh, well, there's no doctors, there's no... There was no doctor's surgery in Great Notley when it was built. There was no dentist in Great Notley when it was built. There was no church. There was no... all right, Tesco, other supermarkets are available. There was no community centre when Great Notley. And there was no primary school other than the one in Whitecourt. Notley Green Primary School was not there. It would not have been possible to obtain any of those community assets if you'd built 50 or 100 houses. It needed bulk to be able to get that. And so this afternoon, the more I thought, I've been on a seesaw on this in terms of, well, is this right or is it wrong? I don't like this plan, to be quite honest, as much as I preferred the plan that we unsuccessfully pursued 5 years ago. And I am concerned about the way we are even-handed between the residents that we have here tonight, and I fully understand that, but they are in the immediate vicinity. I'm not seeing residents from elsewhere around the district coming and saying this is wrong. And I'm pretty certain that we will see the similar next Monday, is it, I think,
Yes,
Madam Chairman?
Yeah.
On that area. And so I'm torn on this, to be quite honest, as to whether we should support it or not. It may be that really we do need to get the voice of the district as a whole and not just those residents who are immediately impacted by this. Because I am sure that there are a number of families throughout the district who really do see the need for extra housing. Whether it's as much as the government say it should be, that's another matter. But I think we all recognise that there is a genuine shortage of housing, and it's unfortunate that we live in an area where people want to live, and people want to stay, and people want to, if possible, grow up and do careers, etc. And we have major employers around, and let's not forget places like Stansted Airport. 2,000 of our residents work there. Now, there would be some who would rather not have Stansted Airport, certainly don't want a second runway there or anything like that. Our job as councillors is actually to think not just of that small area, relatively small area, but we have to think broadly across the whole district. And it is not an easy task to do, but I'm not so keen on this as I was on the previous one, as I say. I'm going to stop there because I think I've made my views quite clear, Madam Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Butland. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's really interesting speeches, both from the floor and also from fellow councillors. So obviously everybody is thinking about this extremely hard and aware that we have difficult choices to make. But essentially, what we have to do is we have to make a choice. We have to make choices. We have numbers of houses to plan for, and as it's been pointed out, those are compulsory. The question for us is, where do we feel in our district those is the best places to provide those numbers? And we made a substantial decision last week, which admittedly I think was very much supported by Housestead. I think these decisions are going to be more difficult. So that brings me onto this site. I mean, I wasn't on the local plan subcommittee last time round, but I am concerned. I've actually read the inspector's report again as well, and obviously this site was rejected previously. Okay, it's a different animal in that it's 3 villages between 6,000 and 7,000 rather than 10,000, but that's still pretty substantial numbers. And I mean, I am absolutely no expert in viability at all. I wouldn't know where to begin, but there was a concern about viability before, and so I would assume there might well be a concern about viability this time. So that places in my mind, a question mark about viability and deliverability. I'm not qualified to say one way or the other, and the information that's been presented to us is not able to give us that make a firm decision on that either. But it obviously is a question mark. I do feel, I think, along with others, that I am concerned that this is going to be a car-dependent development. It isn't within easy access to the railway station, and it the only sort of road that is accessible is the A120. There's obviously the issues Councillor Hooks has pointed out about traffic going through rain and the issues it's going to create through rain. I remember actually previously talking about, nobody ever mentions the connections going north. I mean, I think anybody who lives, say, in Sybil Headingham or even Halstead, wanting to get from the M11 to those areas quite often drives through these lanes to avoid going through Braintree. And I'm sure that anybody living in the north of those villages in the north will be tempted to drive around those lanes, and that, you know, they are lanes. I drove through there myself today just to remind myself what it's like. So I'm concerned about the car dependency. I'm concerned about the impact on the rural lanes north. It has been, it's mentioned in the agenda, the landscape quality was assessed as medium-high sensitivity. And it's lovely. I drove around there today and it's lovely. Okay, fairly flat, but it's really lovely and very rural. And it is very isolated. So that is a concern to me. So we would obviously, we would lose that. It will not be, that landscape will be lost. So that is also a concern, is that are the better places for the scale of development which doesn't have that landscape impact. And there are a couple of other items which mentioned by the inspector that one other item, which was just the impact of Stansted. He did actually mention in his report overflying aircraft, which I believe, I don't know if it's not mentioned anywhere, but it was mentioned in the inspector's report that if this proposal came forward again, you'd need to look at the impact of overflying aircraft and noise. And I did have a quick look on the Stansted Airport, Stansted routes, and I think, I mean, people living in rain will know better than me, but I think aircraft, from Stansted do fly over that area, and there would be potential issue with noise from aircraft. He also mentioned Andrewsfield. I don't know how this fits in with that, but I mean, obviously that wouldn't presumably be able to be a viable aerodrome anymore. Whether that's a thing that matters or not, I don't know. So it may be part of this whole project. But so I do have quite a lot of concerns about this site still. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Any other member? Councillor Abbott, I'll let you come back. And then
Yeah, just a couple of points, Madam Chairman, and then a question for officers, if I may. I hear what Councillor Parker says, but again, those arguments apply to virtually all of the sites we're looking at. Witham and Rivenall are currently overflown by the outbound East Coast starts to fly past, and on certain weather conditions, as I know because they go right over my house in the afternoon in the summer, it's every couple of minutes the jets. So they'd be a bit lower there, but it's the same argument. The question I have is this. We have, and credit to you, Madam Chairman, this process has been genuinely led by this committee, and we have on many occasions said, well, we don't like 200 on that site, can we have 100 instead? What's our wriggle room for doing that with these larger strategic sites? Because, again, thinking of the numbers, and it is a numbers game, you have got one of these, for example, much closer to the A120 at 2,900. Is it possible to look at one on its own? Is it possible next week to look at parts of the strategic site we're going to look at there? Or are we absolutely wedded to the fact that it's got to be what's in front of us?
Would you just like to hold that thought? Because I think what I'm going to do is to, Councillor Bowers has indicated he'd like to speak. Then I was going to give Sarah the opportunity, Councillor Richard, you want to speak as well, but then I was going to give Sarah the opportunity to come back on a number of points. So, Councillor Bowers.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the first point I was going to make is probably connected to that to a certain extent, because I know some comments have already been made tonight about the way we've dealt with the process this time in regards to the chronological sort of way we've done it, and we've ended up in the notes that you mentioned earlier about if we didn't say allocate anything tonight, then we're sort of putting more pressure on what we're doing next week and numbers. And if we look at the sort of the recommendations that are before us tonight and the recommendations that are going to be before us next week, my understanding is, and Sarah can sort of elaborate on that from what Councillor Abbott's saying, we are being asked as a committee to allocate thousands and thousands and thousands more homes or more houses than we actually need. And if that is correct, surely that's not fair on this district, and it's not fair on our residents. That's what it seems from the numbers. So I look forward to what Sarah can clarify on that, because at the end of the day, if we turn around and say, oh, it's to down with about resilience of when we know what's getting built, no one knows when things are going to get built out. It's just a finger in the air. And if we think by allocating more and more thousands, that's going to happen, I think that's just a false economy in that regard. In regards to this actual site before us tonight, I, like Councillor Cunningham, I think he was saying, like, if it wasn't viable previously, then is this going to be viable now? We've obviously, the speakers tonight have mentioned the viability of transport, highways, no sustainable transport, they're sort of non-existent at the moment. I know the applicant has tried to say it's sort of an alternative to the garden community on a smaller scale and all the necessary infrastructure and robust, prudent assumptions, but we have to take people's word for that if that is true. I think one of the things I do have a bit of an issue with is in regards what works have we done so far in regards to this, because I know Sarah's referenced about the initial highway works that have been done, and we've seen on the screen about the sustainable accessibility appraisal, but also the comment was made of not, we can't take any of that into consideration, but this point about commuting patterns have changed since COVID, but we have no information on that, no evidence of that. And as Councillor Cunningham mentioned earlier about the full traffic modelling not being completed, or I don't know if it's not even been started and that kind of thing. So it really does seem that we are, and this did happen last week, I think, with the Housedid application also, as a committee, it does seem that we are being asked to make decisions on sites when there is a lot of key information still missing. And I personally don't feel comfortable with that, because by the time we've allocated and then it goes through the process and it could be part of a plan, and then we've got thousands and thousands of houses we don't need. But we've been asked as a committee to make decisions. We were told that these strategic site meetings were going to be at the end because more and more information would be available. It seems there's very little information available that would aid our decision making, and that doesn't sit easy with me. And that makes it very difficult when we're looking at sites that we are and the numbers that we are, when there seems to be some of the real key information missing, and we just have to assume it's going to come. But by that time, councillors in this committee would have put their hand up and decided one way or the other. Councillors at full council would have decided on the draft plan, but we still won't have that information that I think is key to a lot of the decisions that's being asked of us. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll keep it brief because I'm conscious that officers want a chance to reply to some of the questions that have been asked. And to some point, or to some extent, Councillor Abbott has mentioned what I was going to ask around. Last week we made some pragmatic reductions in some sites, and I was going to ask the same question as to whether or not what's in scope with regards to looking at what's in front of us this evening and indeed next week, with regards to scaling sites to make them more suitable or viable. With this proposal in front of us this evening, then I'm alongside what many have commented on, those in the public gallery and my councillor colleagues. I just want to focus on one point, which is the transport point. It's already been made, but I'm unashamedly going to mention it again. This will be a totally car-dependent site. There is no doubt about it. The cycling element, if you are going to push sustainable transport via cycling, then the sheer conflict between cars and cycles is just an accident, or it's accidents waiting to happen. There is no way you will encourage residents on that site to cycle into Braintree as a form of transport to either pick up a train, etc. point on buses, and as a resident of Great Notley who's lived there for many years, when I first moved to Great Notley, we had a fantastic bus service in Great Notley. It was part of the master plan. We had a fantastic bus service in and out of Great Notley. I think at its peak it ran every 15 minutes in and out of the village, which was fantastic until those subsidies ran out from the developer. And Great Notley now has an hourly bus service that only serves one way through Great Notley. All of the bus stops have plastic signs over them saying bus stop not in use. So the concept of trying to do that modal shift of getting people to change their habits from single car journeys or reliance on cars is fantastic at conceptual stage. It's fantastic when a new site has been delivered. It's fantastic for those residents who are the first movers into that site. It's not so fantastic 15, 20 years down the line when those subsidies have expired and there is no jurisdiction, there is no guarantee of bus services in perpetuity for a site like this. So I think some way it's a bit of an unfair slant to say it will be a sustainable site served by a bus interchange, bus services, etc. As I mentioned, at its peak, I think buses even had their own turnaround spot in Great Notley outside of Tesco's to enable people that wanted to be serviced from Great Notley to Braintree Town as an alternate form of transport. I know Great Notley is covered by the scooter trail at the moment, but we all know what sort of conflicts that has, unfortunately, although I'm a fond advocate of scooters. We know that also comes with some conflict too. So just on the transport links alone, I won't dwell on what others have commented on with regards to this site, but purely on the transport links alone. And again, Great Notley is serviced by the A120 dual carriageway on one side, the A131 a dual carriageway on the other side, and a fairly good straight spine road on the old London Road out of Great Notley. That's going to be impacted by an upcoming development over on Black Notley, which is only going to service more, I think, disruptive car journeys. And a site like this will only add to that and compound that, and the cumulative effects of either people having to jump on the A120 and then come to a standstill at Gallows at Glisrock Corner, or use Panners roundabouts to turn around to try and get back onto the A120 to avoid having to use the old A120 into Dunmow. I think is just going to add to congestion, extra congestion to the road network that's already at its breaking point without infrastructure being introduced. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Right, I think I'm going to give Sarah the opportunity to come back. There's quite a lot to unpack there, Sarah, but over to you.
Thank you. If I answer Councillor Abbott's question first, which is about the options for alternatives, yes, if the committee wanted us to explore an alternative, we could. The only thing I would say is that there is this critical mass in terms of providing infrastructure to make it a sort of 20-minute neighbourhood kind of concept, a place in its own right. So I don't know what the threshold is for a GP surgery, for example, and that the argument for coming forward with 6,000 homes is that it provides enough to meet day-to-day needs. So we would have to explore that further, but if that's what members wanted us to do, we could. In terms of the number of allocation, you're right, we are recommending over the number, the overall target that you'd need for 15 years. What we are looking at is the completion rate. So a site like this would provide 250 homes a year on average once it's up and running, and we are looking for about 1,200 to meet that government target. So taking into account the existing allocations we've got, the windfall, the reason we've recommended as many large sites as we had is because that gets us the completion rate that we need to sort of keep the government happy, if you like. So yes, there is scope for us to explore alternatives. You know, members decide, and that's what officers will do. But I just would ask, be mindful that reducing the quantum may result in it not being as good sustainably, because there's that meeting day-to-day needs point. If I respond to Councillor Bowers in terms of the key information still missing, you're right, we haven't got the modelling information yet. we actually, until last Monday, didn't have the sort of sustainability appraisal document finalised. I had it when we were publishing the reports, but we were still sort of getting that finalised so that we could show it to you at last week's meeting. So, you know, this is because we're twin tracking, getting the evidence together with selecting the sites because of the local plan timetable. So you'll remember that the government, if we don't submit a plan by December next year, will be in the new plan making system. Our plan turns 5 in February next year and will be subject to the higher housing target, so we will be very at risk of speculative development. So in an ideal world, the evidence base would be informing the local plan process first before making recommendations. But it is a slightly different policy framework that we are operating under compared to the previous local plan. So the previous local plan had this sort of what was known in the business as decide and provide for transport. So you decided where you wanted your location to be, and then you decided on your mitigation kind of thing, and you provided that. The new MPPF is very much about this vision-led approach. So it's about not catering for cars in the first instance. It's about thinking about that modal shift from the outset, and you know, providing for cycling and walking first, and then car dependency coming after. So that, you know, that generally inside the neighbourhood you should have that principle of being a walkable, cyclable community, and then as the large site develops, car dependency would become for commuting and external trips that are less frequent than the day-to-day needs. So the policy framework has changed a little bit, but it is also about trying to meet that December 2026 deadline for submitting under the existing local plan system.
Right, thank you, Sarah. Okay, members, well, I don't think anybody can say that we have not given this a very good debate. So we have a motion by Councillor Hooks and moved by Councillor Hooks, seconded by Councillor Cunningham, that this site is not allocated for development. Can I have a vote on that, please? If you just keep your hands up while we do a count. Is that 7? No. Thank you, members. Those against that motion? 2. And abstentions? 3. So that motion not to allocate the Andrewsfield site is carried. Thank you. Thank you, members. I'll just give members of the audience, those who want to leave, a few minutes to go. Actually, yes, so member Sarah has just pointed something out which is a good idea, which is recommendation 15, which is that if 2241, which we've just debated, is allocated, then it's recommended, well, I won't read the whole thing, you've got it there in front of you, but I think we need to deal with that before we carry on with the agenda. Right, Sarah.
Thank you. I mean, I don't have a lot of extra detail to say, other than the promoter has obviously got control of that bit of the land now, so it would be part of the RAIN 2241 location. Hence, it's recommended that if recommendation 14 had passed, we would recommend growth under recommendation 15. But I'll amend recommendation 15 to say that we do not recommend that is allocated now. But yeah, I would ask you to vote on that at the same time.
Yes. Do I need to take? Yes. Yes, I do. Right. Okay. So I need somebody to move that. Councillor Fincan, Councillor Hooks is seconding. Could I have a show of hands on that, please? 7. Yep. Those against? Abstentions? Right. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, members. Thank you for that. Right. Right, members, we've been going for, just an hour and a half. I was going to propose literally a 10-minute break at some stage. We can either do that now, or do you want to go on a little further into the agenda?
Madam Chairman, can I propose we make a little bit more progress? I'm just
Yes,
very conscious of
I think
attendees
so.
in the
I know
public
we
gallery.
have got a couple more, a few more speakers. Yep, that's fine. I just wanted to check. Right, okay, we will then go back up to the top of the agenda. Recommendation 1, site plan 2015, land at Park Farm, Black Knockley. I have no speakers on this item, so we will go straight to presentation, please. Alan, are you doing this one?
Yes, I am.
Yep, fine, thank you.
Right. Right, thank you very much. So this is Plan 2015. It's land at Park Farm, Black Knockley. Site's approximately 24 hectares. It could potentially accommodate around 600 homes. The area is prominently farmland with some small woodland areas and a river meadow. The site doesn't appear to benefit from any sort of direct access to the public highway at the time, although the A120 is obviously quite close to the north. The access limitations limit the development potential of the site. It's therefore not recommended to allocate this site as per recommendation 1 on page 12 of the report.
Sorry, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you. As one of the 3 Black Knockley members present this evening, very happy to move recommendation. Thank you.
Does that have a seconder? Councillor Finken. Does anybody else wish to speak on that? No? Right, can I have a vote on that, please? It's not allocated. And that looks to be unanimous. Thank you, members. Right, recommendation 2 is Bocking 2031, land at High Garrett, and I do have speakers on this. And the first speaker is Councillor Lynn Jeffries, please. Thank you, Councillor Jeffries, and thank you for waiting while we had a lengthy debate on something else.
Very interesting and well done. But I say that just as a passing remark, really.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not quite sure now whether the decision made earlier may influence this, but I'll plough on regardless. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, and I know a lot of it has already been spent up. And the two items that I'm interested in have been recommended not to be allocated for development, although obviously I know the recommendations can change. You have a very difficult decision to make, and the government is asking for a lot of 1,100 dwellings a year. But the government also have pressures with over 130,000 households across the country living in temporary accommodation, including over 83,000 with children. Fortunately for some of us, we are generally living much older, which results in a reduction in the turnover of properties. And parents are not necessarily living with their children in one unit, resulting in further demand for housing. Of course, some of us are lucky enough to have our grown-up children living with us. The call for sites, of course, was the landowners putting forward areas for development. They have not been suggested by the council, although the council are grateful that they have been made. We'd been a bit stuck if they hadn't been. My particular interest is in Bocking North, the area that I represent as a district councillor, and in particular BOC N2031, land at High Garrett, and BOC N3034, land at Dorwoods Hall, Bocking. As I said, they have been recommended by officers not to be allocated for development, which the reasons are listed in the report. I did, however, just want to raise my own concerns for Bocking North. In 2021, the census indicated a total of 2,203 existing dwellings in Bocking North. Since then, there has been considerable development in Towerlands Park and Mill View Park, although due to the complications of overlapping of ward boundaries and changing towards ward boundaries, some of them are in Bocking South. However, we still have outline permission with land not being developed yet, and I know this is a big problem. We have outstanding dwelling capacity on the 1st of April this year of 54. Even without these sites being allocated for development area, we can expect to have a huge increase in housing in the population in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry to take up more of your time.
Jeffries, no, you're absolutely fine. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Councillor Jack Edwards, who is also speaking on both those items.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, to the committee for allowing me to come back and speak again in front of you about these sites. Before I begin my remarks about the sites, I'd just like to say a few remarks as probably the youngest person to speak in this meeting by about 10 years, and just offer a perspective. I think it's been widely cited on what it's like for a young person trying to buy a house, particularly in this district. I did some Googling earlier. The average house price in this district is £329,000, and that's a 4.2% increase on this time last year. That's already unaffordable for many families who will instead turn to the private rented sector. Private sector rents, the average private sector rent in this district is £1,200 a month. That to me is completely unbelievable. Or the social rented sector. In my view, ruining someone's view, displacing a few newts, is not a reason not to build homes for human beings. And we as a country are storing up lasting demographic problems for ourselves if we do not build enough homes. That said, looking at these two sites, clearly there is a highways issue here, and I'm pleased that actually in the report that was presented, the local plan report, particularly on 2034, the land at Dorwood Hall, that highways impact was referenced. Anyone that's had the misfortune to drive up Braintree Bypass at rush hour, or even on a not particularly busy Sunday, will know that second to the A120 Cholesterol Corner roundabout, that is Braintree's second car park. You know, there are also 1,000 homes already green lit for the other side of the road, Straits Mill. A further 750, however many homes it's going to be, on the other side of the road, other side of Broad Road, would hugely add to that highways impact. So whilst I would say I don't envy the task the committee has this evening, I would agree with officers' recommendations that without a significant highways upgrade in this area is not suitable, and I would agree with their recommendation to reject this application. But, as I say, I don't envy the committee's decisions that it has to make this evening, and would urge you, where you can, to try and build some homes for the young families in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Right. Who is taking this one? Alan? Right. To 2031 we're looking at first.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this is BOCN 2031, land at High Garrett. It's around 21 hectares in size, and it could accommodate around 500 dwellings. They have proposed a site access from the adjacent development, which was previously granted on appeal. As there are, as mentioned, question time, several other housing proposals in the vicinity as well, particularly at High Garrett there, Straits Mill, which is actually just off you can just see the little top of the triangle over there, and which I believe will be as recently being purchased. So we have some concerns with this site, the primary concern being the landscape sensitivity. It has been identified to have a medium to high sensitivity in the latest settlement fringe study. There are obviously other concerns as well, including the highways as well, and as such we are not recommending this site for allocation as per recommendation 2 on page 15 of this report.
Thank you very much, Alan. Right, members, anybody want to speak? Councillor Bowes-Flint and then Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This area is in my division as Essex County Councillor, and I think the most common complaint that I get is the traffic on the main road and the accidents that are caused, etc., etc. Basically, the road is not fit for purpose with the amount of traffic that it now takes, like many roads in this district, unfortunately. But this is one of the big ones, and this is one of the main ones into it. And basically, Bocking has been inundated, like a few other villages, inundated with planning permissions. And some of them planning permissions are still sitting there and not built out. We've even got developers arguing with each other about building a road, and one developer building more houses than they should do before the road was built, which has caused immense pain and aggravation, to say the least, in those areas. So, as a district member, I cannot honestly support any of this, so I would urge members to go with officer's recommendation on this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you very much. Just to agree with everything that's said, thank Councillor Edwards and Councillor Jeffries for their representations. I'm sorry they thought they were on early tonight. I do apologise for that, but thank you for holding on. Yes, I mean, Bocking has taken far too much recently in terms of the network. Pleased that there was some good sound representations from the Highways Authority. I think we look forward to the day in the not too distant future when we have these conversations, whatever the future of these type of arrangements and these committees, where you have councils where the education experts will be sitting close to the highways officers, they'll be sitting next to the strategic planners. The process will be enriched as a result and new structures, but very happy to support the officer recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to add, I think what this committee serves to show is that actually there's not the resistance to house building, it's the fact that there's a resistance to house building because we don't have the infrastructure or the mechanisms in place to be able to serve these new houses that need to be built. And to Councillor Jack's point around people do want to move out and they do want their own house. My son and his wife moved out of this district into a neighbouring district because of housing affordability. So they've had to move to Sudbury, which is a bit of a shame for us and for his wife's family, because we live in this local area. We'd have loved for them to have stayed in this local area. But back to the point that was made, the house prices are just unaffordable. The house that they wanted to buy in Braintree, they bought exactly the same spec from exactly the same house builder across the border in Sudbury, and they saved themselves close to £70,000 by doing so. That's the scale of the problem that we are faced with when we're looking at house prices and house building, not just across our district, I suppose it's across the whole of the South East and indeed Essex. But that just shows why there is that need to build houses. And a bit like Councillor Jeffries, we've got rid of one, and fortunately we've still got one left at home. And at the moment, based on affordability, I don't think he'll be able to move out unless he can put a screening question on Tinder to see if his girlfriend has a house where he can move into. And at the moment, until things change, I think I don't really stand much hope for him to be able to move out. But to the point that of the two presentations, or to the presentation in question, this is about not allocating a site that's not in the right area. If the infrastructure was there, it might be a completely different question. It would make it a whole lot easier for this committee to be able to allocate houses if the infrastructure was in place, not just roads, but train networks, or connectivity to train stations, connectivity to bus interchanges, and cycling and walking infrastructure that makes it easier for people to navigate into town centres to get that onward transportation. I wholly go alongside the officer's recommendations for this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, just a couple of brief points. I agree with the officer's recommendation on this, and I think it's an unsustainable site. But just two points in addition, as others have raised them. On prices, one of the drivers for high prices in this area is people moving out of London and coming up from South and West Essex. So the argument that we just keep on building very high numbers of houses because that will bring the prices down and help local people, it just does not work. How do I know? Because I've door-knocked those people. They're very welcome here. They're constituents of myself and Councillor Bob Wright, but a lot of people are moving out of London and coming into Essex. And related to that, if anyone thinks that we allocate loads and loads of houses and developers are going to drop their prices and reduce their profits, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. The only thing that will happen is a market crash, and none of us want that. But I did want to come back to the point about Councillor Jack Edwards said. We live in one of the most nature-depleted countries in Europe. There are 70 million people in this country and rising. Nature is under huge pressure, and it really does irritate me when people, especially people who in positions of authority, councillors or politicians, pick out individual wildlife species as if they're the problem. They're under huge pressure, the wildlife. A lot of wildlife survives not because of us, but despite us. So newts, bats, owls, all the rest of them don't have a voice, so some of us will speak up for them.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Right. Nobody else wants to speak on that. Would somebody like to move something? Councillor Bowes-Flint, moving at site is not allocated. That's seconded by Councillor Ritchie. Right, can I have a show of hands on that, please? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. So we move on to recommendation 3, which is 2034, land at Dorwoods Hall.
Thank you very much. So this is land at Dorwoods Hall. This is a site, total size of the site is about 90 hectares. However, they've proposed around about 30 hectares of the site and 750 homes. The site lies between Broad Road and Church Lane, Church Street, Bocking. It has a number of heritage features on the site, including Grade 2 listed buildings and a Grade 1 listed windmill, as well as some scheduled ancient monuments. The landscape is identified in the 2025 landscape study as being of a medium-high sensitivity, with medium sensitivity areas towards the hockey club end, which is to the north, and a strip towards the southern part of the site near the river. When considering the landscape and heritage concerns for the site, officers aren't recommending this site be allocated as per recommendation 3 on page 18. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, an area that I represent as a county councillor, but this area is quite rightly got a lot of heritage around it. But also, contrary to what Councillor Edwards says, and I think it proves his statement about being the youngest person speaking tonight, of his knowledge of wildlife, there is an awful lot of wildlife around this area as well. And I think we should be protecting that as much as we can, as been said before. So I will be supporting officers' recommendation for the site.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. Councillor Parker.
Just a comment, please, from officers. Only the developer is proposing to 30 hectares of 91 hectares. Could you just explain in relation to the map which area they were proposing to develop?
Yes, they were looking at an area towards the north, so they were trying to avoid the centre with the cluster of listed buildings and moving it over to the right-hand side on that map away from the windmill. So they had aimed for what they consider to be the least sensitive part of the development.
Thank you.
Right. Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I completely agree with officer's recommendation on this one. It's a total infill that's unnecessary. Traffic is just further down from the road, from the site we were just talking about, and driving through Bocking Church Street is a nightmare to all anyway. So whichever way that it was proposed to come out of, not ideal. And I think the heritage aspect, that vista across from Broad Road to the windmill, is one of this district's most famous views. So I agree with Oscar's recommendation on this one. Thank you.
Right. So you move Councillor Bowes-Flint. Does that find seconder? Councillor Hooks. So this is moved and seconded to not allocate the site. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. I'm going to make another slight change now and ask that recommendation 9 which is site Crest 2111, White Notley Garden Village, that we deal with that next, because we have a speaker, Mr. Ray Houghton, who's been sitting for a while. So, Mr. Houghton, would you like to come forward and speak? Mr. Houghton is from BDW Eastern Counties 7. Eastern Counties, sorry, Chelmsford.
Good evening, members, Chair. My name is Ray Houghton, Head of Planning at Barrett David Wilson, Eastern Counties. We are extremely disappointed that our proposals for a new settlement at White Notley has not been recommended for allocation. Over the past 2 years, we've made repeated attempts to discuss with officers our aspirations for the site. However, all requests to engage were rejected. Circa 1,300 homes would significantly help address housing issues, and we contend that White Notley is one of the most sustainable locations in the district for future growth. The site is an adjacent and existing railway station, which enjoys direct connection to London, and obviously with Whittam, Braintree and Chelmsford. The quantum of development proposed supports enhanced bus services for residents in addition to the existing train service, so providing viable alternative uses to the private car. The scheme will be delivered with or without the A120 link, or indeed the A12 widening, and does not require access through surrounding villages to join onto the A12. The significant community facilities offered would serve 11 surrounding villages, and therefore can actually take traffic away from Gully's Corner, where the demands because of the demands on the smaller settlements. White Notley can deliver a range of services and facilities, including a health centre, schools, local centre, sports hub, and a country park. This is a deliverable site in single ownership, which BDW has under its control. We are entirely self-funded. We have a track record of delivery locally, including at Hatfield Peveril and London Road Kelvedon, where the Development Committee recently approved planning consent in August. Kelvedon, for example, will deliver a much-needed new medical centre, a care home, a nursery and retail uses. If this is what 300 homes at Kelvedon can deliver, what can we deliver at White Notley with 1,300 units? We can deliver energy-efficient homes, target 20% BNG, maximise water conservation, and utilise sustainable materials and methods of construction, and employ local skills. We're not a land promoter, we build homes and communities. With regard to your options this evening, you can still influence the future options for the new local plan. The information within the site's assessments are recommendations. We would respectfully request that you adopt option B this evening, and that our proposals for a new garden village are included for allocation in the local plan. This is a realistic infrastructure-led alternative to merely tagging on more houses onto already overstretched settlements. White Notley is a sustainable location for strategic growth, and our preference is to work with yourselves to deliver our shared objective of high-quality, infrastructure-led placemaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Houghton. Right. Alan?
Thank you very much. So this site is Crest 2111, White Notley Garden Village. It's 78 hectares and has been proposed around as per recommendation 9 on page 29. Thank you.
Councillor Abbott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can't remember exactly where the parish boundary is along that side, but quite a chunk of this is in the ward I represent, along with Councillor Bob Wright. The idea that this development would take traffic away from Galley's Corner is, with all due respect, parallel universe thinking. Every development in this area that is being built is increasing traffic on Galley's Corner. One of the most likely routes for traffic to go from here to access services is south into Whittam, particularly the railway station. Anyone in the morning who goes in there in the morning or the evening can see what's happening now. The town is basically at a standstill at peak time. With the recent roadworks we've had in parts of Whittam, you can take 10, 20 minutes to get across the centre of the town. There are a number of well-known pinch points, including the railway bridge, Collingwood Road, B1018, and that will just make it worse. But you know that comment really is extraordinary. Galley's Corner, and we'll come on to this in a minute, is one of the most severely congested parts of the road network in the district, and we shouldn't be doing anything to make it worse. The arguments applied to previous sites about them being standalone and isolated, I think, apply to this even more so. It is literally a large estate or a series of large estates plunked in the countryside. Yes, it is within reasonable distance, I suppose, of White Notley Station, but that's a branch line with a limited service, as we've already heard, and it's far more likely people will try to get into Whitton to access the railway station services there. But also, and I'll come on to this for some of the other sites we're going to talk about, this idea that just because you're near a railway station has a huge impact on traffic. It doesn't. People are commuting less down to London, and most people are not going to use the railway station. They're going to get to work, school, etc. by car. So, sorry to the gentleman who took the time and waited all that time, but I really think this is a very unsustainable proposal, and I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Bowles-Flint.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. With all due respect to the Speaker, they cannot have any idea of what happens on that B1018 at the moment at Galley's Corner. Because if they did, they would not ever have said what they did about it helping. In fact, I hear the words infrastructure and my ears pricked up because I thought, oh, perhaps we are going to get a new road out of this. But no, we're going to do all this and we're going to expect the current roadworks, the roadways, to take all of this housing. Crazy situation. And as I've said at this committee before, with proposals around that area, just don't even go there, because I actually live in Cressing and I struggle to get anywhere. It used to be weekends, but now it's every single day of the week, because you just join a queue of traffic to Galley's Corner roundabout. So full support, Councillor Abbott. And I have to say, and I know this area extremely well, because believe it or believe it not, these days did exist, albeit a long while ago. As a child, I used to walk along there to the Primrose Wood, and we used to pick primroses and have picnics in there. I mean, you wouldn't even imagine having a child walk along that main road now, but it did used to have. But it is literally a blot in the middle of the countryside. This really is, and I could not support this at all, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Right, loud and clear. Anybody else want to speak on this one? In which case, can I have a mover, Councillor Abbott, and a seconder, Councillor Bowles-Flint, and a show of hands that this site is not allocated? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Now, I think I am going to suggest a 10-minute break, as we're going for 2 hours, and we will come back to recommendation for land east of Braintree. All right, so 10 minutes, please, members, to 22. Okay, members, thank you very much. Hope everybody made the most of the break. Right, let's crack on. We go back towards the top of the agenda now. Recommendation 4, site crest 2101, land east of Braintree. I have no more speakers on anything this evening. So, Alan, are you taking this one?
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is Crest 2101. This is land east of Braintree. It's 153 hectares with a potential capacity of 2,500 dwellings. The site is being promoted as a mixed-use growth location with housing, employment and other uses. Just to give members an idea of the... apologies, I was looking at the wrong screen. There we go. Apologies. So this is the larger extent. Yeah, there we go. So this was the site allocation of the site submission proposal. Now, if we're looking at the safeguarding issues, there are some things like the A120 Route 4 protected route option, some ancient woodlands and local wildlife sites, and the top picture on the right hand side is looking south from the A120 towards the woodland, and the bottom picture is looking north from Long Green. There's also some additional archaeological sites on the site there as well, which are the purple areas. So the site itself, it's within two parish council boundaries, so it's within Bradwell and Cressing. Both parish councils do object to the proposal, citing its unsustainable location, potential reliance on car use. They've also cited the concern about the potential loss of a new A120. So the area, so officers do consider that the area of the A120 should be retained, although it's not currently doesn't have any sort of permission at the moment or no confirmed funding. But this site could help to provide some improvements to other infrastructure in the area, such as the Galleys Corner roundabout and Marks Farm roundabout, as well as providing its own accesses. Right, so it can be seen from the layout here that the site there would be proposing sort of as landscaping buffers within the site there. Sorry, and further work would, however, be required on landscape impacts. Our current assessment doesn't quite go out for quite as far enough, so we'd have to have a quick look at that again. The landscape is generally identified as medium sensitivities, with other medium to medium low sensitivity areas within the north and within the south. We will also need to look at the heritage and ecology issues, and I think it might be worthwhile considering whether or not a green buffer should be provided for the site, for the villages at Tiger Green and Cressing as well. And the map on the screen now is sort of the proposed extent of the strategic allocation. These extents are obviously draft at this stage. They would be refined as we go through the local plan process and the planning application process for them as well. So officers are recommending that the site is allocated as per recommendation 4 of page 20 of the report. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, partly within the ward council right now I represent, we have an awful lot of sites we've put into the local plan. I did think this one would be recommended, to be honest, as an extension of Braintree, so I'm not surprised. The thing I'm most concerned about is coalescence with Tiger Green, and I think it's obviously up to members tonight, because I'm only one vote, but if they do allocate that, I would ask that is a strong part of the recommendation, because what has happened is that yellow site there is an appeal site that was refused by the council, That has already, in effect, closed over half of the gap between Braintree and Ty Green Village, and this site would exacerbate that process. I did want to pull out a comment which I thought was a bit unfortunate on page 20, that talking about the views of the parish council, that, so I quote, "The neighbourhood plan is a lower order document and the strategic plan would take precedence." The inspector took the similar view with the 250 houses for the yellow site there and basically ignored the neighbourhood plan. Now, I know some of the people in Cressing who spent many, many long hours on drawing that neighbourhood plan up, only to see it basically trashed, not just on this site but others. And when I've been asked locally about other villages that I represent and other places nearby, should we have a neighbourhood plan? I said, well, it's entirely up to you, but, and I gave that example, will it actually achieve what you want? So that's the comments on that. Regarding the transport issue, obviously this is very close to Braintree, so you have got direct links right into the biggest town of the district. So from that point of view, there's a sustainability aspect to it. I think the A120 route D, I mean, I've never thought that's the right route for it anyway, but I think that is a significant red herring, and I know we're going on to talk about the larger version of this site. We have to be very careful about that, because if you actually look at the detailed maps, as I have, it just basically ends as a stub in the countryside. They're not going to build the A120, they're going to build a very small proportion of it. What I think interests me more, and I don't know if officers can say any more about this, is precisely what they intend to do with Galleys Corner. They said there might be some improvements, but what are those? 2 decades ago, myself and others suggested that the A120 and Galleys Corner are separated, that the Galleys Corner is taken in an underpass under Galleys Corner, which would then just be a local interchange. And it was poo-pooed at the time, but I would suggest, had that suggestion been taken out, we wouldn't have the problems we've got now. It wouldn't have solved the problems further downstream, but at least it would have dealt with that issue. So that's my views on it, Madam Chairman. As ward member, I'm not going to fly a flag and say, and also, and I think I have been consistent throughout this process, there is a compromise to be reached here. You know, those who have said in the past about me, oh, he always objects to all housing, well, I think I've proven I've not done that, and I'm not doing that with this one, but I think there needs to be some caveats around it if it is recommended.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. In terms of the neighbourhood plan, you know, I presented quite a lot of them at full council for approval, and I always speak very highly of them because I know how much work goes into them. I mean, technically, what is written in the report is correct, but yeah, I agree. It could perhaps have been put a little more tactfully, I would say. But yes. And also, I'll ask officers perhaps clarify a minute. Are you saying that if this were to be allocated tonight, you would like to see more in terms of the buffer, the green buffer? Yeah, okay. Right, Councillor Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I also noticed that about the neighbourhood plans, and it's not nice that officers are talking down the neighbourhood plans, because, like Councillor said, they're not just Cressing, but many areas have spent a lot of work on them for it. And I think the wording, like you say, is unfortunate. But I hope that officers don't treat them with disdain that how it looks. In regards to this, in green buffers, we've lost so many in Cressing. The coalescence as well, it's part of Braintree now, isn't it? You know what I mean? But I do agree with the point about if it is allocated. I think the issue with this is Galleys Corner. It's gridlock now. It's whatever time of the day you go there. I think the amount of times we've heard, and to quote, opportunity to improve infrastructure at Galleys Corner and Marks Farm, the amount of times we've heard this about the opportunity to improve infrastructure at Galleys Corner, it's just ridiculous. Then it even comes through on planning applications and it still doesn't happen. You know what I mean? And we can't rely, like a situation, we've got another site in Cressing where planners, we've had an application where we can't even connect a path together so people can push a pram or whatever. You know, to rely on clients to say, oh yeah, we're going to get infrastructure at Gallis Corner. So what we need tonight is what information has been done up until this point with the highways, with all this information. Where's the modelling? Again, have we got information that's missing? Because at the end of the day, this site will be key on what's happening at Gallis Corner, and if we're being asked tonight to approve this with no information on what that looks like, rather than just like finger in the air again, you know, I mean, I just don't think that's acceptable. And to make that the area that's basically been overdeveloped and overdeveloped and overdeveloped, and you can't move in a car, and then let's just put another over like 2,500 houses with no thought on the road network, rather than a few words in a report. I just find that hard to accept. So I'd just like to know what level are we with all this information, all this modelling in regards to the highways and the improvements going to happen to Gallis Corner. Can we have all that information tonight? Thank you.
I'll ask officers to come back in a minute. Does anybody else want to come in before then? Councillor Cunningham.
Just to agree with everything that was said, and thank Councillor Bowers for his most recent contribution, but also full of praise for all the comments that Councillor Abbott made. This is a phenomenally underwhelming strategic site, and that's putting it mildly. And I think it's a great credit to Councillor Abbott that he's been able to approach it as reasonably as he has, because there are innumerable deficits in this site that, as Councillor Bowers quite rightly said, need to be reconciled very, very quickly if we even to remotely consider looking at this in a positive light.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Parker.
Just a little comment really to follow up on what other members have said, is that I think the problem we're facing in looking at all these sites is we're so constrained by the lack of road infrastructure. And, you know, we're being asked to approve huge amounts of housing with no promise from or commitment of anything from the government to improve the road infrastructure. And the fact of the matter is that most people, the vast majority of people, get to work by going in a car. And you know, I almost feel like something like this is sort of like going to be forcing the government's hand. You cannot provide this number of houses without doing something about the roads. So, sorry, it's just not really contributing to the debate on this particular site, but it's just such a problem for us, I think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker. Alan, would you like the job of coming back?
For this site, the promoter has provided us with a transport accessibility study. As with all these sites, everything is very high level at this time. We're still at very early stages, and I think a lot of the developers will be prepared to do much more detailed work once they get a positive steer from this committee. So they have provided us, so as I said, we've got a study. They have recognised that the A120, that this scheme wouldn't provide the A120, but would safeguard the land required to provide one in future. They've provided some indicative layout changes to Gallis Corner and Marks Farm roundabout as well, that they think they would be able to achieve to help bring this development forward. But with all of our developments, and obviously yes, we do have quite a lot of limited road infrastructure, we will be having to look at sites that have potential for walking and cycling access. This site is adjacent to Braintree Town Centre, Braintree Town, and it has the ability to potentially improve links to the town itself. We would have to obviously figure out, sustainable ways of getting over the A120 into the town. That's not beyond the realms of possibility for cycling, walking, that sort of thing. So the site, in transport terms, yes, we've got some high level work done. We are still waiting on the majority of the highways evidence base, which we'll hope to have available. But as it stands at the moment, we've got some high level information, but it's not down to sort of the detail as yet, I'm afraid.
Councillor Bowes-Flint, and then I think Councillor Cunningham wanted to come back.
Sorry, I can't help this, and I can't let it go, that we hear that suitable arrangements for walking, etc. will be there. We've currently had planning permission for a lot of houses in Cressing where a new roundabout was provided and a footpath to nowhere. And that footpath is not there, and it's extremely dangerous now for anybody with a pushchair or a wheelchair because they physically cannot get from Cressing to where the new development has altered the road. They put a new footpath in the new development and stopped it. So when you see things like that happening right in front of your eyes, how on earth can you expect this to happen? Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham, did you want to come back?
Yes, I think it's a case of where can we practically go from that. I mean, as I say, I agree with everything else. And yes, there probably are some interesting footpath, cycleway opportunities cutting across the A120 into the Becker's Green estate down to Marks Farm. Yeah, I'm Clay Pits. I'm sure you could do something quite clever there. But it comes down to the issue of what you're going to do with Galley's Corner. Now, for all, Galley's Corner has featured very heavily in our discussions, including sites some way away from Galley's Corner. And bearing in mind the incredible encroachment that the parish of Cressing has had, the impact on neighbouring communities, and we've still got colleagues in the audience, member colleagues, parish council colleagues from Black Notley. You know, they know as local parish council members there that how they are impacted in terms of the resilience network with all this additional housing. What practical options have we got in the remaining few weeks? Now, despite the dissatisfaction with this, no one has removed that it shouldn't be allocated yet. What scope have we got within our limited time frame to go away, do the additional work, get some assurances on Galley's Corner in order to potentially unlock this? Because I think if we're prepared to unlock this, take this to full council and Regulation 18, I don't see how this could be remotely sound as it sits with such little information or such little guarantees underneath to back up. We need some answers to Galley's Corner, I think, if we even have a hope of wanting to unlock this site.
Thank you. Sarah, Alan, any reassuring comments or not?
Other than that we are working on the information at this time.
Working on the transport modelling.
It's underway at the moment.
Sorry, Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a whole completely chicken and egg situation, though, isn't it, that we're at? That we've just been told that there'll be more work done if us as the committee give some steerage as to what we want. But we're not prepared to give our decision, particularly, because we don't know what is being or what could be on the table. It's a complete catch-22, whichever analogy we want to use. And yeah, I think it's a bit unsafe to go down this route at this time without knowing. We all know Galley's Corner is the pinch point for the whole of our Braintree district area, whether it's that or Marks Farm. Our whole bypass is chocker, and everything we're looking at the moment is adding to it. And I can see why that would be a good bolt-on to the side of Braintree, as you know, to be kind of urban development and widen Braintree out that way. But where Cressing and Tyre Green and that area have taken so much, and yeah, Councillor Abbott's right with the extra buffers and everything required, but it all boils down to the traffic issues at Galley's Corner and having no reassurance of anything or what could be done to improve it. If it's just putting some new white lines down to direct the traffic, which is what's been done the last 2 or 3 times, doesn't really help, does it? Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor Hooks has just stolen my thunder. I was going to say the last time we were promised improvements to Galley's Corner roundabouts, it just caused more chaos, and the local users have just about gotten their heads around how to navigate a roundabout contra to the highway code because of the way that the signs and the line markings are. I feel for people that aren't the regular users of that roundabout, because they're the ones that unfortunately end up with scrapes down the sides of their cars and issues. That is why I think, quite rightly, we are looking for that assurance of what's going to happen, and then we can make an informed decision. if you ask us to do something other than that, it's quite unfair for us to be able to be put in that situation.
Councillor Cunningham.
I think we're at a bit of an impasse here and we need to find a way forward. Can I just ask what the agenda is for the 20th of October? Has that been outlined as a, quote, the wash-up to the local plan meeting? Have we got a full agenda on the 20th of October?
The 20th of October will primarily the remaining policies and chapters in the local plan. Any evidence that comes forward that is available in time for that meeting will also be presented there. I will point out, however, the deadline for those reports is the 10th of October.
Right. We're in unprecedented times here. I'm going to put something forward to see if this gets support from the committee. Far more work needs to be done to unlock this. I'm sensing there is a sort of an agreement there. I do not know what the capacity of the transport team is at Essex County Council. They are not sitting there waiting to be engaged by Braintree District Council. You know, this work needs to be programmed, it needs to be planned. That team is a small resource working across 12 districts of the county, each at various different stages of their local plan. However, I think there is 3 weeks scope, even if it means an addendum, what's the word I'm trying to say, an appendix or appendix item appearing a day before with some sort of detailed transport information, transport appraisal, even if it's not the full transport modelling. I would like to think that could be done, but there's no guarantee that can be done. But I think we need to have some greater transport insight in terms of how we could unlock Galleys Corner capacity, projections, some sort of material data able to help us come to a more informed decision. So I'm going to move deferment to the 20th of October in order to gather more information that would help the decision-making process at this stage.
Right, and that's being seconded by Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Bowles-Flint.
Just for clarification, what Councillor Cunningham's trying to do, is he trying to defer all of the sites that we've got in front of us tonight that are in Cressing, or all of the sites that are on here?
Councillor Cunningham, just
this one, because obviously this is
just this one because it has a recommendation for drafting. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, 2 points. One is just to cite 2 countries randomly. If this was Germany or Japan, they would have thought a long time ago that it might be a good idea to separate out the local and through traffic at Galleys Corner, as I've been saying for 2 decades, and tunnel underneath. And they're so good at it, they'd probably keep the existing road above operating while they did it. But in this country, although we basically invented major engineering, you know, through Brunel and people like that, we seem to have lost the ability. Anyway, I would agree with what Councillor Cunningham said. I don't think, I mean, I still am, you know, as one of the ward members, possibly willing to accept this on the grounds that we've just got to find numbers. But I've got to say that at Galleys Corner, we need to know more. Just loading 2,000 more houses onto that area, plus the development that's underway, plus the potential for the DIY store and all the other stuff in the area is too much to a risk. So I would support the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Parker and then Councillor Ritchie.
I'm just wondering whether what is proposed, what is it called? Braintree East Gateway is the sort of is that what it's called? Sorry, I'm trying to remember. The combination of sites that include this site, should we defer that one as well?
The Gateway Park.
Gateway Park Urban, which we haven't discussed that yet, have we? Yeah. Yeah. Officers, do you have any? Well, I've had something moved and seconded to defer, and then possibly the other one as well. Any particular comments?
Well, we would probably be better to consider at the same time.
Yes.
There are a number of other sites on this agenda which could potentially be considered as extensions as well.
Okay. Well, I think let's take this one. Members, do you want to look at
2101?
Yes, 2108 now, and then we'll and then take a vote? Am I right? Or do we take a vote on to defer this one? Emma, I'm looking to you slightly.
Yes, Chairman, really there needs to be an amendment to the motion submitted by Councillor Cummins, so it's absolutely clear what the members are agreeing to upon the call for vote. Thank you.
Chairman, on that advice, thank you. I'm happy to move that this is deferred till the 20th of October, both the strategic site that's currently on the screen and the second strategic site that you mentioned. So that's for, sorry?
Right, 2108.
2108,
Okay,
yes, yeah.
So you've moved that and Councillor Ritchie's seconded. All right, let's have a show of hands on that those two sites are deferred, subject to further highways information. Right, let's have a vote on that. Okay, thank you. Those against? Councillor Martin. And, yeah, sorry, Councillor Ritchie.
I was going to say, with regards to any evolving information, I don't think we'd be opposed as a committee to have that as soon as it's readily available. I know that the agenda might just have to say, might not have the full report in it, but I think, given the context of what we know, we'd be happy to have that information as and when it's available, even if it's at short notice before the meeting.
Yeah, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, just briefly, Madam Chair, I agree. This is a critical issue. If you listen to BBC Essex, Galleys Corner's on there pretty much every single evening with the congestion. And just to mention, the DIY store, I believe the mitigation for Galleys Corners was to stick traffic lights on it and change the lanes around. I mean, that is pathetic. If you're going to build thousands of houses, we need something dramatic, dare I say, to actually deal with the issues.
Okay, right. That message is received loud and clear, so I think we need officers to give highways an equally clear message on that. Okay, all right. Let's move on to recommendation 5, which is Crest 2105, land between Braintree Road and Long Green. Please.
Thank you very much. So this is land between Braintree Road, Long Green. It's around about 12 hectares in size. Could accommodate 330 dwellings. So it's between Tide Green and Ashes Road. It's generally away from the main urban area of Braintree, but is obviously adjacent to the newer development at Galleys Corner. The site has some constraints, including public rights of way. There is a single adjacent Grade 2 listed building, though there is some separation there. Landscape sensitivity is considered to be medium high to the northern part of the site and medium on the southern extent of the site. The site is, however, not recommended for development as per recommendation 5 on page 21.
Councillor Abbott.
Supporting the recommendation, Madam Chairman, because the coalescence issue again applies and the loss of countryside, but also, and I think I've raised this before, I think there's a site missing off this map. So just to the left of the red hatching, was it 2105? I'm sure that site's got planning permission, and it's not appearing on the maps. And that plays to both the countryside issues, but also coalescence, because you're not getting a fair picture of coalescence.
You think that's right, Councillor Bowes-Smith, do you? Right, okay.
Yeah. I'd have to check the capacity on that application. Generally speaking, if it's over 10, we would identify it on the map and stick it in the development boundary as well. So, yeah, we'll have to check that.
Sorry, can you say that again?
If it's over 10, we would generally allocate a site.
Definitely over 10.
Yes.
Definitely.
So yeah. Presumably, it's also not been completed in the time. Yeah.
Not been started.
Not been
It's got
started
planning
yet.
permission. So if it's got planning permission, does it not go on the map?
It should go on the map if it's over 10 and it's still outstanding. Yeah.
So that
can be
may
added,
be a mapping error. Okay, which we'll look at. All right, but other than that, any other comments? Right. Would somebody like to move? That's not being allocated, Councillor Bowes-Smith. Seconded by Councillor Abbott. A show of hands, please, from everybody. Thank you, everyone. That's unanimous. Right. Recommendations.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Would now be a good time to move standing orders as we almost to that time?
Yes. Good point, actually, because I keep forgetting we started at 6:30. So we we may go on past 9:30. So, yeah, are you moving? Yeah, and seconding. Is it okay with everybody? Yeah, just in case we do. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ritchie. Right, recommendation 6, Crest 2106, land at Ashes Farm, Cressing.
Okay. So this is a smaller site for 2.77 hectares and around about 50 dwellings. It could have potentially been adjacent to one of the larger sites. The site is small. It wouldn't be considered an appropriate extension to Cressing. It would be difficult to integrate into the existing settlement, and it may have been more appropriate as part of a wider development, but you would still it would most likely result in coalescence of any development coming out of Braintree onto Cressing Village itself. So therefore there would be quite some landscape implications for that. So officers aren't recommending this site as per recommendation 6 on page 21.
Okay. Any comments from anybody? Councillor Abbott.
Move that we go with officer recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Bowes-Flint. Show of hands, please. Thank you, members. Good. Okay. Let's do it. Now, the next one is 2108, the Gateway Park Urban Extension, which we wanted deferred. So, do members want any information? We don't want anything on that. No, okay. We've dealt with that. That's fine then. Right. So, recommendation 8 is Crest 2110, land south of Whittam Road and Mill Lane, Tye Green.
So this is a site for 5.27 hectares. It's been promoted for either employment, renewable energy, or around 100 to 150 homes. The site is a large field which appears to have been left fallow. It is relatively flat with open views from the public highway. Access could be achieved from Mill Lane potentially. There are 3 Grade 2 listed buildings nearby, but development could potentially damage the openness and landscape character of the area, as it's identified as as having medium to high sensitivity in the latest landscape study. It would also be the first major development of housing at this side of Mill Lane. It's not proposed to allocate this site either alone or in combination with the White Notley Garden Village proposal that was mentioned earlier, and that's as per recommendation 8 on page 26.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So on the map, the site hatched in yellow on the far left, that was granted on appeal quite recently. You've got 2 substantial developments within the bow of Mill Lane, which this council granted. You've got the Horbush Green site, which is being built out. So this would be another site on top of all of them. And it would jump the boundary. It would come south of Mill Lane, which does provide some sort of a natural stop point. So definitely excessive for the village, and go with officer recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Bowes-Flint. Show of hands, please. Yep. Thank you, members. Okay. We've done recommendation 9. So, recommendation 10, Crest 2115, land between Ashes Road and Lanham Farm Road, Cressing.
Okay, so this site's about 44 hectares. It's been proposed for employment, primarily as part of larger development proposals from Braintree. It could have been promoted as a standalone site or as part of Crest 2101 or 2108. The site is a flat open field. It does have limited features and the boundary is relatively sparse. The majority of the area was not reassessed in the 2025 landscape study, as it was too far out of the away from the settlement of Braintree. The site has potential concerns for adverse impacts, including heavy goods vehicle movements, as well as a impact on the character of the area, and it being a large development away from an existing settlement. As such, it's not recommended for allocation as per recommendation 10 on page 31.
Councillor Abbott.
Me again.
Yeah.
Well, this one I would class in the outrageous category. You've got, down just below it, you've got Cressing Old Village, which does retain its character as a village in the countryside. If this was for employment, you would clearly get a lot of commercial traffic, such as vans and lorries, which would all, I would presume, as a standalone site, be using Balls Tie Road, the narrow road through the village, Long Green. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that you're going to increase traffic further on those points. There's also a road which runs where that red dotted line is up to the north, that links up to the A120. That's even narrower with more bends. You'd have more lorries going up there. So all in all, I support officer recommendation.
Fine. Councillor Parker, I think you got...
Just very quickly, because I thought we'd granted planning permission on this site for a solar farm, or part of it. Have we not?
Oh. I'm not sure. Although
apologies, I'm not certain. Yeah.
I think I remember.
It does ring a bell
here,
slightly,
isn't it?
but anyway, yeah, okay.
Madam Chairman, it is concerning that officers have not got current planning permissions on these maps, and there's 2 tonight that are missing planning applications, and it is important that they're on there. So can we just have a recheck when we're putting maps up about current planning permissions, please? Thank you.
Come back just
Yes,
quickly
yes,
on that. Just to
Alan,
say,
yeah.
I perfectly agree with you with the housing. We're not required to identify renewable energy proposal on our proposals map. So if there's permissions for that sort of development, then we wouldn't identify them specifically. So.
I'll second Councillor Abbott's recommendation and support his wording of outrageous.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So that's moved. Fair enough. That's been moved and seconded. Can I have a vote on that, please? It's moved and seconded not to allocate. Yes, thank you, members. Right. Moving on to recommendation 11, Crest 2410, land off Ashes Road, Cressing. These are all much of a muchness.
So this is 11. So this is 2410. Apologies,
yeah.
apologies, I can't
Right.
quite read the PowerPoint. Land off Ashes Road Cressing is 54 hectares. It was proposed for around about 1,100 dwellings. It's a green field site between Tye Green, Long Green, Cressing. It's a relatively flat site with a medium to low sensitivity. Small areas within the green buffer identified in the Cressing neighbourhood plan. Access was proposed from Ashes Road. The site does have limited heritage constraints, but as a standalone development is not considered suitable at this time. As such, we're not recommending for allocation as per recommendation 11 on page 34.
Right. Anybody want to
Move officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott, and seconded by Councillor Bowers-Flint and Councillor. Oh, are you voted? Yeah, no, I'm happy to. No, it's all right. I just don't want to miss anybody who wants to speak. That's been moved and seconded to not allocate the site. If I could just have a quick show of hands, please. Thank you, members. Right. Recommendation 12, Crest 2411, east of the B1018.
So this site is about 30 hectares. It's been proposed for 750 dwellings. It's a greenfield site south of Appletree Farm. The site is generally agricultural use with some residential uses on the boundary, with some heritage assets nearby. The site doesn't integrate well with Cressing Village, and it would be considered a considerable extension to the village, resulting in a potential unsustainable development, which would be reliant on private car usage, and there's also rather limited services in the area. As such, it's not recommended to allocate the site as per recommendation 12 on page 36.
Okay. Councillor Bowers-Flint.
I'm actually beginning to think that every field that has a crop in it is coming in front of us in Cressing tonight. And I think this one also fits in the outrageous category, Councillor Abbott. So I'm quite happy to move officer's recommendation on this. Thank you.
Right, thank you. It's moved and seconded to not allocate. Show of hands, please. Thank you very much, members. It's unanimous. Right, recommendation 13, GNBN 2151 land south of Flitch Way.
Chairman, can we just wait for Councillor Hooks to make
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry. Well done, thank you. Right, okay. Yes, thank you, Alan. Yep.
Okay. So this site is GMBM 2151, land south of Flitch Way. It's around about 45 hectares, proposed for 750 dwellings. The site is south of the Flitch Way and is within the green buffer between Braintree and Rain. An application on the site was rejected at appeal for 1,600 dwellings, but this site is in close proximity to some heritage assets. Public rights of way are also in the site, particularly the Flitch Way, and the land is close to the A120. An adjacent site was considered earlier this year but was rejected to the east side of the site, and this was actually where they were going to be proposing an access from for this site. I mean, the site is next to the main town, but it's likely that development would have a significant impact on the landscape character of the area, including the Flitch Way, and as such we are not recommending it for allocation as per recommendation 13 on page 39.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Cunningham.
Happy to move officer recommendations in line with all the previous things we've said about coalescence and the logical gap between Braintree and Rain and the Flitch Way. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie, you seconding that? Right, moved and seconded. Could I have a vote, please? Thank you, members. Right, so that takes us, right, oh yes, sorry, you need to get, no, just get Councillor Hooks back. Whitworth, right. So recommendations 14 and 15 have been dealt with. So what do I need to do with that?
No, that's
oh no, that's
yeah,
sorry, that's
yeah.
about right. That's it. Oh yes, it is. Done.
There was a vote done on 15.
We did. Yeah, we did. So, right. Yes, unless is there anything under item 6? Just slow plan view. Do any comment?
We can give you a summary of where we are with numbers, and that might help illustrate earlier queries as well.
Yes. Can we just do that, please?
And if I could just say as well to members, it was a statement of fact about the lower order neighbourhood plan. It's not intended as sort of it's not intended as a slight on the neighbourhood plan, but we'll be mindful of that language in future.
Thank you. Right. Right. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Carry on. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just to give members a indication of where we are currently with housing numbers. So the following is a series of graphs showing the level of development proposed in the local planning compared with draft allocations, proposed future allocations, as well as the existing housing trajectory. So the first graph shows the current position without the larger Kingsdean proposal at Kelvedon. But this does include a Kelvedon proposal a smaller proposal for Kelvedon. All scenarios, so it's not just this scenario, it shows the 26-27 period having a significant level of shortfall in housing completions for that year. So the graph shows that towards the end of the period, the completion rate does drop off from year 36-37, and it shows an under provision of homes over the planned period, even when the completion rate is evened out. And it's probably about a couple of hundred under the housing target. This is obviously compared to the standard methodology target, which could also change in future years. Slide 2, this shows the scenario, but this time with the inclusion of the larger site at Kingsdean. So as you can see, we still have a smaller shortfall. However, the plan period, over the plan period, we have a much more comfortable buffer of 1,000 homes over that period. And slide 3, this shows the draft scenario without Andrewsfield. As you can see, we get a significant drop-off in housing provision later in the plan. And lastly, slide 4, same scenario as slide 1, but this time we've removed East of Braintree, and again we get a level of completions drop-off. So, I mean, longer-term housing growth predictions, they can be very tricky to figure out. We could see scenarios where we get an economic boom, we're doing very well, or we could get a recession, and the local plan period is likely to be over several economic cycles. So the completion rate, we are largely out of our hands. Larger housing sites could also take longer to come forward than expected, and they can also be required to face developments such as to ensure we do have to have certain infrastructure facilities, such as we may receive advice that we couldn't build a particular site over a certain level until we had wastewater improvements at a particular sewage work, something like that. Most of these things we will find out in the run-up to Regulation 18, but we'll definitely get responses from all of our statutory consultees during our Regulation 18 consultation. So the NPPF requires us to identify specific deliverable sites for 5 years following the intended date of adoption. So currently our base plan period is proposed to start at 26-27. Where possible, specific developable sites or broad locations for growth for the subsequent years 6 to 10, and where possible for years 11 to 15 for the remaining plan period. So under what we were originally been proposing, we would have a number of homes actually come forward, so between 8,000 and 9,000 homes would be coming forward after 2041. So now a lot of these larger sites will be much longer term delivery, meaning that the council does have the opportunity to address development within Braintree district for a significant period of time, well after the new local government structure comes into effect. But local plans are required to be reviewed every 5 years, and in any case also in the event of a council merger you would also need to have a local plan review within the first 5 years of that happening. So yes, what our local plan is aiming to do is to provide a sort of strong foothold for the district with its local plan moving forwards. So yeah, I think that's where we really are at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Alan. So I think members, we did pretty well allocating small sites, which we hope will come forward fairly quickly. I think you can see from the slides the issue is delivery rates as the plan progresses, and how that's going to pan out, and maintaining a 5-year supply, and it's something the inspector will be looking at very carefully, is how we are going to produce the numbers from sort of 2027, 28 onwards. Yep. Okay. Councillor Ritchie.
Just a couple of questions. So I think the first one is a bit more just of a clarity from myself. So this is all dependent on build-out rates. If developers don't build their houses, then we won't hit those targets. Secondly, the green over-delivery shown from 27 up to 34, 35. If we smooth that line out, do we not have a constant trajectory, or am I reading the map wrong?
Sorry, not in all scenarios, no. I think one of the others, I think it was the second slide. Yeah, this slide here, if we smooth it out, then we will have that. We'll be over the required figure by about 1,000, right, roughly. Yeah. But all other scenarios we would be under.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no more comments? Right, members, thank you very much. That concludes tonight's business, because we have no urgent business in public or private session. I'll close the meeting at 9:30. We're dead on 3 hours. Well done. Thank you very much, everybody. Good debates.